TL. Both the third and ninth ancestors of the human race are named G, so henceforth, the third ancestor will remain as G, while the ninth ancestor will be changed to Jin. In the chaos, the tense situation had been alleviated. Chuzan put away the chaos Dao mirror and did not continue watching. Ren Chang, Qin Ying, and the others had woken up from their states of enlightenment one after another. After that, they returned to their residences in the heavenly domain and continued to cultivate. Now that the 9 zones were changing, it was the best time to get stronger, and all of the Daoyuan realm cultivators in the heavenly domain were engrossed in cultivating. In Heiyu's residence, the young man in red looked anxious. He felt a little uneasy that Heiyu had not returned after leaving for so long. Chuzan looked at the young man in red. This was an expert that prison Dao ancient god had suppressed. In order to escape the chaos abyss, he had dispersed his Dao path and created countless clones. With the help of the great abyssal calamity, he managed to escape with a clone. If he could erase the abyssal imprint on his body, he would be able to conceal himself from prison Dao ancient god. Furthermore, if the clone managed to grow stronger, it would be able to rescue the main body. Once the two were reunited, the young man in red would grow stronger again. Chuzan looked at Heiyu. Her innate divine soul had already undergone a minor transformation, and her strength had increased significantly. Then, he looked at Chu Yi, who was also growing stronger at a rapid pace. It made sense. After all, his youngest disciple had already walked the path of cultivation and was merely retracing his steps. There would be no bottlenecks until he reached the peak of his previous cultivation level. Even then, the bottleneck would not be a problem for him given the changes that had occurred to his new body. All he needed was time. In the reincarnation cycle, someone suddenly opened his eyes. As the Supreme Lord here? Chuzan's voice then replied in his consciousness, "What's the matter?" That being said, Chuzan already knew why he was looking for him out of the blue. Outside the chaos, a figure appeared at the edge of the heavenly Tao. There was no powerful aura around his body, and he seemed unremarkable. Piao and the others did not even notice that an expert had returned from the chaos. Even though there was a certain distance from where they were. Under normal circumstances, any expert who entered this area would be detected. However, no one noticed Ji's appearance. Chuzan could not help but sigh in admiration. As expected of the expert who had killed countless experts of the various races and passed down the inheritance of the extreme Tao. "Supreme Lord, my true body has returned and wishes to meet you," Ji's incarnation said. Chuzan naturally understood what he meant. Ji's incarnation had entered the reincarnation cycle and obtained a great opportunity. His true body had also obtained a great opportunity. The true body then guessed that the changes in the 9 zones were related to Chuzan. He was extremely curious about this mysterious existence and how strong he was. If he was too weak, the title of Supreme Lord would be unworthy. Chuzan did not have the intention to allow Ji's true body to enter the 9 zones for the time being, even if it was not strong enough to shake his existence. He would not allow exceptions. If Ji's true body wanted to enter the 9 zones, he would have to wait. Chuzan wanted the 3 realms and the heavenly Tao to completely stabilize first. That being said, it was necessary to meet him. The divine might ancient form would come in handy now. Outside the heavenly Tao, Ji felt a tug, and his body fell down, entering the heavenly Tao. Not long after he entered the heavenly Tao, the scene in front of him changed and transformed. He could see a small courtyard, within which sat an eternal ancient god exuding endless divine might. Chuzan had used the heavenly Tao to connect the space between him and Ji. Sensing the divine might, Ji was greatly shocked. He had no choice but to be respectful. Ji greets the Supreme Lord, he cupped his fists and said. It was too terrifying. There was no aura around this eternal ancient god, but his every action seemed to contain boundless might that felt like it could suppress anything and everything. He could not help but think of those legendary existences. Was this person one of them? Among the countless rising stars of the chaos, only a few managed to catch my eye. You are one of them, Chuzan's majestic voice rang out. Ji was the 3rd ancestor of the human race. When he was born, Sha had already reached the Daoyuan realm and had left the 9 zones. The two of them were probably an era apart. One Daoyuan was at least 1 billion years. 9 Daoyuans were a great Dao era, which meant 10 billion years. As far as Chuzan was aware, there had been 9 great Dao eras in the history of the 9 zones, which meant that no less than 100 billion years had passed since the world was created. Of course, this was limited to what Chuzan currently knew. Perhaps history stretched even farther back. Ji and Sha's ages were probably 10 billion years apart, yet his strength surpassed Sha's. Chuzan roughly estimated that Ji's Dao path was no less than 20 million miles long. However, the extreme Dao was special, which meant that in an actual fight, he would be no weaker than an expert whose Dao path had reached the 30 million mile mark. Perhaps he might even be able to go toe-to-toe with Prison Dao Ancient God. In terms of talent, Ji was indeed extraordinary. In comparison, Chuzan truly felt that Prison Dao Ancient God was trash. "You're too kind, Supreme Lord. I'm just an ordinary person who has just transcended the world creator realm," Ji said humbly. Chuzan's eyes seemed to see through everything. The extreme Dao cannot create a world, but it has its own destiny. How many people in the chaos can walk this path? Extreme Dao cultivators did not create their own worlds, but followed a different path. It was also because of this that Ji's arrival had not been noticed by Piao and the others. Ji's heart trembled. This expert actually knew so much about the extreme Dao. He had to be a legendary existence. Given your talent, in the future, you will likely reach the Chaos Supreme Realm. After Chuzan saw Ji's true body, he understood the latter's terrifying talent. His extreme Dao was extremely powerful and had endless potential, and walked a different path. Even among the many ancient chaos gods, there were probably very few who could compare to him, which was why he had managed to become so strong so quickly. Ji was also surprised. This mysterious existence actually evaluated him so highly. The Chaos Supreme Realm. The Chaos Supreme is the stuff of legends, and is supposed to be beyond transcending the world creator realm. Does the Chaos Supreme Realm really exist? Ji asked curiously. It naturally exists, Chuzan replied succinctly. Ji's expression became more and more respectful and reverent. Was this person an existence that had transcended the chaos? How terrifying would that be? On second thought, he felt relieved. How else had this person created the reincarnation cycle? And how else had he brought such great changes to the 9 zones? Chuzan and Ji only had a brief conversation. Since they had met, it was only fitting that Chuzan, as the senior, to reward Ji and indicate his expectations for the latter. "I'll bestow this upon you." An ancient jade talisman flew into Ji's hand. "Many thanks, Supreme Lord." Ji was shocked. From the jade talisman, he could sense the aura of creation. He did not examine it immediately, but left after bowing respectfully. Chuzan's divine might ancient form also disappeared. After Ji left the heavenly Dao, he returned to the chaos. He then examined the jade talisman. It actually contained the aura of creation. Other than the aura of creation, it also contained the wonders of a certain magical power. "I'll call this the good fortune jade talisman," Ji muttered. He put away the jade talisman and returned to his chaos mountain. He found a place and silently comprehended the wonders of creation. He did not return to the human race. If he were to appear now, he would definitely cause a huge commotion. Many of the descendants of the experts present had died at his hands, so his presence would likely trigger a disaster for the human race. However, he did not regret what he had done. The deaths of those experts had been necessary to ensure the survival of the human race. The disciples woke up from their states of enlightenment one after another, and became the strongest Daoyuan realm cultivators in the 9 zones, surpassing Hong Yuanchu and the other senior Daoyuan realm cultivators. Chuzan opened the chaos weapon furnace and allowed his disciples to use it to create their own chaos weapons. Chuzan did not lack materials or resources, so everyone, including his unnamed disciples, could refine their own chaos weapons and other artifacts. Offensive, defensive, escaping, concealing and controlling. These were the main 5 types of chaos artifacts, and each disciple gained a full set. In the entire chaos, there were probably only a few who possessed a complete set like this. Only Chuzan was rich enough to equip his disciples with such a complete arsenal of chaos weapons and artifacts. In the blink of an eye, the 91-year milestone had arrived. The reward was not world origin energy this time, nor was it the chaotic energy of creation. Instead, it was a Chaos Supreme technique and a Chaos Supreme artifact that could wield the power of the supreme laws of the chaos. It was likely that he would continue to receive these until he reached the 100-year milestone. This meant that he would receive exactly 9 Chaos Supreme artifacts and 9 Chaos Supreme techniques. Each of these likely corresponded to one of the 9 supreme laws of the chaos. After the disciples began to refine their chaos treasures, Chuzan called Chui over. He passed on the origin scripture of the Lord of Chaos to him. At the same time, he passed on Dao Path's secret techniques to his disciples. For example, he taught Ding Yu a Dao Path secret technique related to the Great Dao, which was the Boundless Destruction Sword. Chu Zan passed on the Dao Path secret techniques that the system rewarded him with to his disciples. He even passed these down to his unnamed disciples. Furthermore, he also took the time to clarify any of their doubts on the path of cultivation. Su Shaner and Chu Yun returned to the New World to continue teaching the human race there. Ding Yu and the others also returned to their respective residences in the heavenly domain. Their strength had increased too quickly, so they needed to settle down and stabilize their cultivation foundations. Chu Yi stayed by Chu Zan's side and did not go to the heavenly domain. Although he looked like a teenager, he had just been born not long ago, and his mental state had not yet matured. Heiyu did not return to the heavenly domain immediately either. She wanted Chu Zan's opinion on the young man in red. After all, his background was not ordinary. Chu Yi sat obediently at the side. Among his senior brothers and sisters, he was the closest to Heiyu, perhaps because they both had extraordinary origins. That's an incarnation with a wisp of his origin essence that escaped from the chaos abyss, Chu Zan explained the origin of the young man in red. It's up to you whether you save him or not. He has many incarnations, so once he fuses them together, his Dao path will exceed the 100,000-mile mark. If you're worried about losing control, you can choose not to save him. The fact that the young man in red was being suppressed by prison Dao Ancient God meant that he was not too strong. Of course, this was only relative to Chu Zan. His goal is to conceal his presence and save his main body. Of course, by staying in this world, he has already avoided the enemies. Since the heavenly Dao was now in control, prison Dao Ancient God had no way of spying on the 9 zones. After Heiyu gained an understanding of the young man's background, she pondered for a moment and then said, "Master, I'm lacking a steward by my side. I think he's very suitable." The identity of the young man in red was also that of one of the overseers of the Chaos Abyss. Naturally, he had no problem managing the abyssal beings that Heiyu had converted. Currently, Heiyu commanded the most powerful force in the 9 zones, with hundreds of Daoyuan realm beings under her banner. During this time, 10 more Dao realm cultivators broke through to the Daoyuan realm, including Ji Dexin. "This is for you. If you're worried about losing control, you can use it," Chu Zan said as he handed over a jade talisman. Heiyu accepted the jade talisman. "Thank you, Master." After Heiyu left, Chu Zan taught Chu Yi for a while before sending him to the New World to learn under the guidance of Su Shaner and Chu Yun. In the New World, he would learn about the world and temper his Dao heart. "My lord." The anxious young man in the red heaved a sigh of relief when he saw Heiyu return. She would reconstruct the residence around the training hall. After giving her orders, only the group of red-robed young men remained in the training hall. "You can fuse into one." The young man in red was silent for a moment before he began to fuse with the others. A single young man emerged, whose Dao path had reached the 100,000-mile mark. The abyssal imprint still existed on his body. If it was not erased, prison Dao Ancient God would be able to find him no matter where he was, and might even be able to use the imprint as a medium to attack him. This was also the reason why the young man in red was so anxious. "What's your name?" Heiyu asked. In terms of strength, this incarnation was no longer as strong as Heiyu. Only the strength of this young man's main body bothered her. However, with Chu Zan backing her up, Heiyu was unafraid. "Hua Shui," the young man said after a moment of silence. "One of the ancient chaos gods, Hua Shui." "Yes. How strong were you when you were suppressed?" Hua Shui raised his head and looked at Heiyu. "If you remove the abyssal imprint, I'll serve you for 1,000,000,000 years. Is there any need to ask for so many details? Do I need your 1,000,000,000 years of service?" Heiyu looked at him calmly and said, "So what if you're an ancient chaos god? You serve me wholeheartedly, or I'll send you back to the chaos abyss." "You're not strong enough," Hua Shui said after staring at Heiyu for a long time. "Do you think my strength will stagnate? My total years of cultivation cannot even be compared to a fraction of how long you've been rotting away in the chaos abyss. How strong was I when you first saw me, and how strong am I now?" Heiyu was imposing. Hua Shui's expression changed. After a long while, he lowered his head and said, "I can serve you, but you need to know that I have a great enemy. That great enemy of yours can't threaten me, nor can he enter this world." Heiyu interrupted him. "Hua Shui pays his respects to the Lord." Hua Shui knelt down. After being suppressed for countless years, even an ancient chaos god had to lower his head in exchange for an opportunity for freedom. "I hope you sincerely serve me as your master. Betrayal will not end well." Heiyu waved her hand, and her domain appeared, enveloping Hua Shui within and wiping away his abyssal imprint. I wouldn't dare. I would rather die than betray you, Hua Shui said respectfully. After wiping out Hua Shui's abyssal imprint, the origin essence of this incarnation was naturally marked with Heiyu's own imprint. Were it not for the fact that his main body was too strong and could break free from Heiyu's imprint, she would not have asked Chuzan for advice. Of course, as Heiyu grew stronger, her imprint would also grow stronger. As long as she was given enough time, even Hua Shui's main body would not be able to escape her grasp. They're all from the abyss, so I'll let you manage them. You'll be my general. Yes, thank you, Lord. There is great fortune in this world. Find a place in the training hall to cultivate and seize this opportunity, Heiyu said, waving her hand. Yes, Lord. Hua Shui bowed and left the palace. Heiyu also immersed herself in cultivation. The living beings of the 9 zones were all in the process of undergoing a great transformation. Some hidden ancient existences were also given a new life or improved during this period. The heavenly Tao was undoubtedly the source of this transformation. Outside the 9 zones, the experts from the various races were all still trying to enter the 9 zones. However, they were only met with failure. Experts from the chaos continued to rush over. Most of them were experts from the 9 zones, and were the ancestors of various races. Dozens of World Creator Realm experts were making their way over, as well as many Freedom Daoyuan Realm experts. As the number of experts increased, the atmosphere in the region of the chaos surrounding the 9 zones also became heavy. The races of the 9 zones did not want the races of the chaos to interfere in the affairs of the 9 zones, and arrived at an unspoken agreement to join forces. They even considered roping in the races of the ancient chaos world into their alliance. After all, before the last Great Tao era, many experts from the ancient chaos world often visited the 9 zones. The various powers and experts of the chaos all formed a single faction as well. They were here because the changes in the 9 zones were too great, and they wanted to get a share of the loot. Moreover, something was happening in the depths of the chaos. It was very likely that the 9 zones would become the key to surviving that change. The human race was all alone, and would likely become everyone's target once a full-scale conflict began. If things continued in this matter, they would likely be the first to be eliminated. Hong's expression was serious. Senior brother Sha, when will Ancestor Chu return? Hong asked. The ancestors of the human race addressed each other as senior and junior brothers, except for Chu, who they all called Ancestor. Chu was the first leader to start the era of the human race's growth, and he had an extraordinary status. Furthermore, it could be said that the Sha, Ji, Hong, Yu, Luo, and other human experts had all grown up thanks to Chu's schemes and secret protection. Ancestor Chu might have returned, Sha said after a moment of silence. Hong nodded. Chu was known for his flawless planning. It was impossible for him to not have made some preparations for such a big change. The outside world all thought that he was a cunning person who was good at scheming and mediocre in terms of combat. However, only Sha and a few others knew that Chu was actually very strong. He was just hiding his strength. 3 years had passed. Compared to 3 years ago, the world had expanded by more than 3 times. The speed of expansion had already slowed down. However, it did not stop and no one could enter. All of the human Daoyuan realm experts had returned. However, anyone whose Dao path had not reached the 500,000-mile mark was asked to leave. A war could break out at any time, and if they didn't have enough strength, they would definitely die if they stayed. Originally, other than the World Creator Realm experts, everyone was asked to leave. However, the various races would not allow the human race cultivators to leave. Since you've come, why leave? Mo Kai sneered. Their intentions were obvious. These people had entered the Heavenly Tao and obtained some opportunities. They would definitely become World Creator Realm experts in the future. In the Immortal race, only Taoist Flying Cloud had obtained this opportunity. However, he had the backing of the Immortal race, so no one dared to make things difficult for him. He returned to the ancient chaos world to cultivate in seclusion. Sha unslung his saber from his back. Get out of the way, or we'll fight, he said coldly. The Myriad Cave realm is willing to accept a few human disciples, a shriveled, corpse-like expert said. This person had transcended the World Creator realm as well, and the Myriad Cave realm was a powerful force in the chaos. Sha looked at him and said coldly, I know what the Myriad Cave realm is trying to accomplish. If you interfere, I'll kill you. Ha, Sha, what big words. Are you looking to make another powerful enemy for your human race? So what? Shaw's aura burst forth, and a flash of saber beam appeared. Haha, my friend from the Myriad Cave realm, hold Shaw back for a while. I'll go and slaughter these humans, Mokai laughed. Do you all think that the human race is easy to bully? A voice rang out, ignoring the demon race, who we've been enemies with for countless years, why is the Myriad Cave realm getting involved? An elegant man walked over slowly. He was holding a black pearl in his hand. He casually threw it toward the forces of the Myriad Cave realm. The expression of the expert from the Myriad Cave realm suddenly changed. His aura surged out, and his world and Tao path appeared. However, when the black pearl cracked, it created a black barrier that covered the forces of the Myriad Cave realm. Boom! The expert from the Myriad Cave realm who had transcended the World Creator realm bombarded the black barrier, and cracks started appearing on it. Then, the barrier exploded and turned into a ball of black light, which flashed briefly and then disappeared, taking with it the forces of the Myriad Cave realm. The experts present were all stunned. That black pearl was definitely some kind of supreme treasure, and had transported those people to an unknown place. Another pearl appeared in Chu's hand. He looked at the various races and smiled. This is a grudge between us and them. I'm sure none of you will interfere, right? Everyone remained silent, which could be considered to be a silent agreement not to interfere. Chu looked at Mokai. Mokai, why are you making things difficult for the juniors? Mokai narrowed his eyes and stared at Chu for a long time. The strength that Chu was displaying at this moment was not of someone who had transcended the World Creator realm. In any case, Chu had never been known for his strength. The human race cultivators were excited. With Chu's return, it was as if they all found confidence and a pillar of support. Greetings, Ancestor Chu. Chu nodded and waved his hand. Those who have not reached the 500,000-mile mark can leave now. This time, no one stopped them. Mochi's face darkened. He did not know what Ting was thinking. Piao did not say anything either, as if the immortal race wanted to stay out of this. The human race cultivators did not hesitate and left immediately, disappearing into the chaos. Chu waved his hand, and a small flag appeared. It disappeared into the chaos, wiping away all traces of the human race's cultivators to keep them from being tracked. The cultivators of the 9 zones all looked at Mokai in confusion. Why did he suddenly allow the human race to leave? Who's watching me? Mokai suddenly said coldly. The reason why he did not stop Chu was because the moment Chu appeared, he had been locked onto by something or someone that gave him a faint sense of danger. This feeling did not come from Chu, but he could not detect where it had come from. As soon as Mokai spoke, the rest of the cultivators who had transcended the World Creator realm were stunned. Was there a hidden expert? May's spiritual sense swept through the chaos. A cloud of black mist appeared behind Chu. When this happened, many experts' expressions changed. Before this black mist appeared, it seemed to have merged with the chaos itself and was difficult to detect. The black mist condensed and turned into a strange figure. Its scarlet eyes stared at Mokai. An abyssal monster. This one had once devoured a chaotic being too. Why was it with Chu? Chu smiled elegantly. Brother Blackie, do you see now? Don't you like demons? Quote. The strange figure nodded with a happy expression. Brother Chu, you didn't lie to me. Demons are really delicious. Tai, who had just arrived, could not help but curse in his heart when he saw this scene playing out. Chu must have tricked that monster into working for him. He looked at the monster. It looked like a simple creature that only relied on pure strength. As such, it was not strange that it had been deceived by Chu. Even an experienced person like him had been tricked by Chu a few times, let alone a brainless monster like this. Chu ignored Mochi's murderous gaze. He pointed at the demon race's vassals and the other races of the 9 zones that followed the demon race's lead, and said with a smile, all of these have demonic power. They're very much yours, Brother Blackie. The monster nodded its head and opened its mouth. If it had drool, it would have been drooling by now. Brother Chu, you're the best. You're the only one who's good to me in this world. Don't worry, I'll eat whoever dares to bully you. It's what I should do. We're brothers. If I don't treat you well, who else would I treat well? Chu smiled very kindly. All the experts present were cursing in their hearts. Chu was as cunning and shameless as ever. Why did that monster not swallow Chu? Why was he tricked so easily? The monster wriggled its body and stared at Mokai. I want to eat him, but I feel like it'll be a little difficult, he said in distress. 625 Chu the Playboy Part 1. At this moment, Chu gave the monster an idea. Brother Blackie, it's definitely difficult for you to eat him now. You can strengthen yourself before eating him. As he spoke, he pointed at the experts on the demon race's side. Eat them first. After eating them, you'll become much stronger, right? At that time, you can come back and try to eat this fellow. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark. The monster's eyes suddenly lit up. Brother Chu, you're right. Then let's do this. Then, the monster looked at Tai. That one looks like you, but it's too big. Can it be eaten? You can't eat that. It's very silly. You can't eat it. You won't be smart after eating it. Oh, then I won't eat it. I'm smart. It'll be terrible if I become stupid. Tai's face darkened. The monster turned into a cloud of black mist and spread out, directly sweeping towards the demon race's forces. Mokai roared and attacked in a hurry. Boom. However, even though he had made a move, there were still demons who were swept into the black mist. They disappeared in the blink of an eye. The black mist dodged repeatedly, but was unable to completely shake off Mokai. Brother Chu, he's following me. What should I do? Brother Blackie, don't you think it's very interesting to play around with him while you eat? Isn't it very fun? Yes, fun, really fun. Scarlet Demon roared in anger. Chu, you deserve to die. Chu's smile remained. Mokai, have some fun with him. Chu's return had dealt with the myriad cave realm and made Mokai run around trying to save the demon race experts. Ting, join forces with me. Mokai roared. Lightning flashed around Ting's body, and he was about to interfere. At this moment, Chu laughed. Ting, if I were you, I wouldn't get involved and drag the celestial race into this. Brother Blackie is immortal. Ting's body froze. That monster was only targeting the demons at the moment. If he interfered, that would change very quickly, and the celestial race's forces would then be in trouble. The celestial race's experts were tense. Ancestor Ting, the matters of the demon race have nothing to do with us. They were not cultivators who had transcended the world creator realm, so it would be very dangerous to provoke that monster. This monster had a mysterious origin. When it was weak, it had been defeated by many people. However, it could not be killed or suppressed. On the contrary, it kept getting stronger. In the end, it devoured the chaotic being and got to this level of strength. The other races did not dare to make a move rashly. Mokai roared in anger. However, the louder he roared, the happier the black mist seemed to become. He was like a child who had just found an interesting toy. The cultivators of the 9 zones all looked gloomy. Chu, as always, was not strong, but had his ways of dealing with dangerous situations. Tai, long time no see. Chu laughed. HMPH. Tai tilted his head and snorted coldly. The smile on Chu's face froze as he cursed in his heart. This big idiot, why was he acting like this? He looked at the immortal race. Piao, long time no see. Piao laughed flirtatiously. Little brother Chu, why are we so distant? Didn't you always call me big sister Piao in the past? Tai turned his head and said angrily, Chu, do you still consider me a brother? The moment you returned, you hooked up with this cheap woman. What about me? Piao's face was ashen. If not for her fear of the jade talisman in Tai's hand, she would have beaten this idiot to the verge of death. Who was he calling a cheap woman? ... Chu's smile was bright. Tai, we're brothers. There's no need for so much courtesy between us. In the past, when I seduced Xiao's lover, weren't you the one who kept a lookout for me? Hearing this, the experts present immediately revealed shocked expressions. Chu seduced Xiao's lover. Xiao was the first disciple of the immortal ancestor. Chu was hooking up, and Tai was keeping a lookout for him. The mental imagery was super exciting. Piao was stunned. There was such a thing. Tai smiled when he heard that. If Xiao knew that his little lover was hooking up with you, he'd probably die of anger. Chu Yi sighed. Time has passed too quickly. I really miss the old days. She gave me countless treasures. There was even a divine pill refined by the immortal ancestor. All of the experts were stunned, and felt really sorry for Xiao. It was really too tragic. This fellow Chu had led the rise of the human race back then. The first time the human race rose, could it be that he had relied on this method? Xia and the other human experts all wore strange expressions. Ancestor Chu's experience was really rich. Now that he was revealing these secrets publicly, was he prepared to settle old scores? Chu, you're indeed shameless. You can only rely on these underhanded methods to get by. Ting sneered. Chu looked at him. Ting, how's your sister? In the past, I traveled with your sister for more than 10 years. It was such a happy time. We only separated after your sister left the 9 zones. Chu's face was filled with a reminiscent expression. It's been a long time since I've seen your sister. I really miss her. Ting's face turned green. B-starred. Chu had actually seduced his sister. Ting almost vomited blood. The group of experts was once again stunned. Goddess She was also Chu's old flame. She was the personal disciple of the celestial ancestor, the holy and pure goddess She. It was rumored that Yao, another personal disciple of the celestial ancestor, had admired goddess She and pursued her before, but was ruthlessly rejected. Yet she had gotten together with Chu. Don't tell me that you also hooked up with the demons. Mei could not help but ask. When Chu heard this, he snorted, HMPH. How could I have hooked up with such evil scum? How many experts have you hooked up with? Mei wondered if he had seduced anyone from her race. The ancient experts could not help but recall the first time the human race rose to power. The immortal race did not target them. The celestial race did not target them. The dragons did not target them. The fiery phoenixes did not target them. Only the demon race did. It was also during that period that many humans joined the immortal race, and even the celestial race accepted some human disciples. As for those that joined the demon race, they became hated enemies of the human race and were hunted down. As Piao and Ting thought of this, they were stunned. Were those humans spies who had been planted by Chu? Although they seemed to have transformed into members of the immortal and celestial races, who knew where their hearts and loyalties lay. Looking back on history, those people did not seem to help the human race and even suppressed them. Were they just waiting for an opportunity? If this was so, then would the immortal and celestial races not be compromised? Chu, this guy was indeed not simple. Your aunt and I are close friends, Chu said with a smile as he looked at Mei. Mei's expression was ugly. As expected, this guy had hooked up within the heavenly fox race as well. However, everyone was puzzled. How did Chu manage to hook up with so many female experts? Many people turned to look at Piao. It seemed that this person also had an unclear relationship with Chu. Human B***starred, you're not a good person. When my aunt was in trouble, why didn't you save her? Mei scolded angrily. Chu peeked at her. Who said I wasn't a good person? Quote. If you were, how could my aunt have died? Mei's voice turned cold, as if she wanted to attack again. Who told you that she died? I have never let down those who treated me with sincerity, Chu chuckled. Then where is my aunt? Mei asked anxiously after being momentarily stunned. When the time is right, she will naturally appear. Chu ignored Mei and turned to look at Long Hai. Long Hai, your sister didn't come with you. Long Hai cursed in his heart. Chu was a B***starred. He had actually seduced his sister. B***starred, aren't you afraid that the girls you've seduced will all gather together? This was no longer two timing. Who knew how many people he had hooked up with? Kun Sheng, a cultivator from the ancient chaos world who had transcended the world creator realm, could not help but say, Chu, the ones you've hooked up with, they all seem to be much older than you, right? The experts present were stunned once again. Chu was known as the human race's first ancestor, causing the people present to mistakenly think that he was of the same generation as them. In reality, Chu was their junior. Piao and Ting were the heaven-blessed geniuses of the same generation, and the gap between them was less than 1 Daoyuan. Chu was not like that. He was a junior in the human race. Before him, there was Mei's sister and her lover, who had unparalleled talent and was known as the #1 monster of the human race. He had created a cultivation technique that belonged to the human race. Chu was a latecomer. The difference between him and these ancient experts was at least one great Dao era. Whether it was Xiao's lover, goddess Shi, Mei's aunt, or Long Hai's sister, each of them old enough to be Chu's ancestor. What do you know? Chu smiled and said, haven't you heard of the saying that matured wine tastes better? They're all tens of billions of years older than me, so what's wrong with having a little fun? The group of experts cursed inwardly. Chu, so you're such a person. The human experts looked embarrassed. So, Ancestor Chu is such a person. Tai raised his head and looked around. Chu was indeed such a shameless person. When she seduced Xiao's lover back then, he was the one who kept watch. He was traveling with goddess Shi and pretending to be her servant. Whenever Chu got a treasure from her, Tai would get a share as well. Back then, his strength had increased rapidly, partly because of the treasures Chu had given him. He even taught me how to hook up with beautiful women. Tai's thoughts drifted a little. He could not help but recall the powerful woman he saw in the chaos abyss. He had tried to seduce her, but was tricked and suffered heavy injuries to this day. Hong looked at Chu with admiration. Chu was handsome, elegant and carefree. In the human race, everyone said that Hong had ancestor Chu's style. His gaze turned to Piao. This immortal maiden was rumored to be a human race genius, and it was extremely likely that she was the human race's first person with great fate. If she had not entered the immortal race, she would probably be called the mother of the human race now. If he hooked up with her, Hong seemed to see the scene of Piao, this big sister, casually giving him the most precious supreme treasures. Piao's face darkened. With Hong's puny strength, how could he hide his intentions from her? One look was enough to tell that he had impure intentions. "I'll kill you if you have any evil thoughts." Hong quivered and hurriedly hid himself. Chu looked at Hong speechlessly. How could Piao be so easy to seduce? If she was easy to seduce, he would have done so long ago. After all, it had not been that long ago that he had been calling her, Big Sister Piao. On the other side, Mo Kai was still roaring in anger, unable to do anything to Blackie, who had devoured 3 more people, and seemed to be having a lot of fun. All the experts present had to admire Chu's methods. He had no idea how he had managed to trick this monster into trusting him. Thanks to Chu's appearance, the various races lost their interest in targeting the human race for the time being. Also, they were very curious as to why Chu would bring up his past love life at this time. The people he had hooked up with in the past were now all influential figures in their respective races. If they helped him, how could all the races unite against the human race? Perhaps only the demon race was untouched. However, would they be able to deal with the human race alone? The human race of today was no longer the same as before. Moreover, anyone who knew Chu already knew that he had planned everything out. Since he had appeared and was talking so casually, it meant that he was confident in dealing with any crisis that the human race was about to face. The strange black mist monster was a helper he had found. However, did Chu only have one helper? Many of the powerful experts of the 9 zones turned their eyes to the forces of the races of the chaos, wondering if Chu's helpers were hidden among them. This guy was too good at this stuff. Furthermore, they had not seen him for such a long time, so who knew what other trump cards he had prepared during this period or how many experts he had seduced. In the 9 zones, Chu Zan was looking at Chu with a strange expression. It was too awesome. The people he had hooked up with were all experts who were tens of billions of years older than him. Amazing. He was well versed in the ways of living off women. Furthermore, Chu looked a little bit like his father Chu Chuluo. No, it should be the other way around. His father looked like Chu. Chu Zan's body had already changed and was no longer part of the Chu family's bloodline. The 3,000 chaos bodies of creation was a special constitution that would allow him to transcend the chaos. It was beyond the scope of this bloodline. Even so, he was still a descendant of Chu, just that he no longer shared the latter's bloodline. As expected, this sly old fox was very powerful. On the surface, it was all schemes and plots. In fact, strength was his true confidence. Chu Zan was also extremely good at hiding his strength. With his special constitution, no one could detect his cultivation level. Chu had already transcended the world creator realm and was no weaker than Sha. However, Chu actually had 2 worlds and 2 Dao paths, each paired respectively. One world and Dao path was his creation, while the other world and Dao path were created by the fusion of refinement and transformation of an ancient expert who had fallen, but had left behind a Dao path and world that contained a trace of creation. When that ancient expert died, he was no weaker than someone who had reached the 30 million mile mark. Chu's strength was no weaker than someone who had reached the 20 million mile mark. This was because the worlds and Dao paths had yet to fuse completely, as he had only recently obtained them. However, if necessary, he could temporarily force the fusion to increase his strength. What made Chu Zan look at him in a new light was not just the extra world and Dao path, but also how unorthodox and unexpected he was. Within the chaos, the experts from the various races gathered. There were many forces that came from the chaos, and the leader of each force was an expert who had transcended the world creator realm. All of these leaders had lived for countless years, and could naturally sense an opportunity when they saw one, as well as sense dangers. However, no one could make heads or tails of Chu, whether it was his strength or his schemes. As expected of the first ancestor of the human race, the old sly fox was amazing. Chu Zan sighed sincerely. At first, he thought that the corpse-like incarnation in the heavenly domain was possibly Chu's clone. However, after seeing Chu, he knew he could exclude Chu. Chu Zan had a few guesses about that person's identity, but he was still uncertain. In the chaos, Chu, who was chatting and laughing with many experts and reminiscing about his glorious past, unexpectedly, was just a clone. That's right, the Chu in the chaos was a clone, and not his true body. This was why Chu Zan was so impressed. A clone had already transcended the world creator realm. How could his main body be any weaker? Furthermore, once his clone merged with his main body, Chu would be equal to, if not stronger than, Prison Dao Ancient God. Chu, compared to Piao and the other personal disciples of the immortal ancestor, was a junior from an entirely different era, yet he had caught up to their strength. From this, it was evident that this old guy's talent was extraordinary. Of course, Chu had received a lot of help in his cultivation from the female experts he had hooked up with. Living off women was indeed a shortcut. It could save him countless years of hard work. Prison Dao Ancient God, this ancient chaos god, was truly trash. Even Chu had caught up to him. Among the races of the 9 zones, besides the old ancestors of the immortal, celestial, and demon races, as well as the dragons and fiery phoenixes, who could compare to Chu among the personal disciples of the various old ancestors. Piao, a personal disciple of the immortal ancestor. Ting, a personal disciple of the celestial ancestor. Mokai, a personal disciple of the demon ancestor. Their strengths were inferior to Chu. Even if they were not the strongest among the disciples of the 3 ancestors, it could still be inferred that not many of their fellow personal disciples could compare to Chu. Maybe this was also why Chu was talking about his past affairs, and even talking about how he had seduced Xiao's lover. It was likely that he was confident in dealing with Xiao. With him and Ji around, the human race would be safe as long as the old ancestors did not show themselves. Ji's extreme Dao was extremely powerful. Furthermore, he had received some secret techniques from Chu Zan, and was also comprehending the jade talisman Chu Zan had given him. He would continue to grow stronger and stronger. Chu probably had allies and helpers too, and likely had spies in all of the major races. Moreover, his female partners over the years were not weak, and might possibly emerge to assist him in times of need. Chu Zan looked at the black mist monster. He was also very curious as to how Chu had managed to trick this monster into following his orders. The black mist monster had an extraordinary background, and Chu Zan could sense a familiar aura from it. Unlike the chaos abyss that Prison Dao Ancient God used to suppress powerful enemies, the abyssal aura around the black mist monster was purer and denser. It was likely that this strange monster came from a naturally created chaos abyss, where the old laws of the chaos were eliminated. It was considered to be where the chaos dumped its garbage, in a sense, but it also contained its own special opportunities. The old laws that had been eliminated might not remain as such forever. Occasionally, some eliminated laws would emerge back into the chaos. These laws naturally contain some of the mysteries of the chaos. The strange black mist monster exuded the aura of the eliminated laws of the chaos. If Chu Zan's guess was correct, this black mist monster was actually formed over a long period of time from the mixture of eliminated laws of the chaos. It would be extremely difficult to kill him. Even if one could defeat him, he would not die, and merely return to where he was born from, and slowly recover. Moreover, it would be quite difficult to defeat the black mist monster, and it was almost impossible for anyone in the early stages of having transcended the world creator realm to do so. Mokai was being held back by the strange monster, and the demon race experts were terrified and kept trying to get behind Mokai to keep themselves safe. Of course, they had also thought of hiding among the forces of the various races, but the other forces were not fools. If they allowed that to happen, the strange black mist monster might start targeting them as well. Therefore, as soon as they saw the demon race's experts approaching, they immediately drove them away. At this moment, the strange black mist monster and Mokai seemed to be playing a game, and the former was definitely having fun as he cackled occasionally. Ever since he was born, he had experienced too few things. Other than devouring some experts, he had no other experiences. Everything he saw was fresh. This was why he was so easily fooled by Chu. At this moment, the more he played, the more excited he became. Mokai was completely infuriated, but there was nothing he could do to the black mist monster. He was striving to protect the demon race's experts, which was utterly exhausting. If he did not protect these people, they would all be devoured by the black mist. However, Mokai was not only doing this for the sake of these people, but also for his own life. After devouring the demon race's experts, the black mist monster would definitely become stronger, and would likely pose a threat to him. Chu, you and I are irreconcilable. Mokai angrily roared. Chu was too lazy to respond. The demon was a fool. They had been enemies from the very beginning. Why would this change anything? 628 The Divine World. Honestly, he really wanted to join forces with Sha to kill Mokai. However, if he and Sha made their move, Piao and Ting would definitely interfere, as well as the other experts who had transcended the World Creator realm. There were also the other experts who had transcended the World Creator realm who would also definitely make a move. In the 9 zones, apart from the major races such as the Immortals, Celestials, and Demons, there were still some experts who managed to obtain a fortune or opportunity and transcend the World Creator realm. It would not be long before these guys returned one after another. Chu was trying to figure out how the human race would be able to establish a firm foothold. He looked at the 9 zones. The changes in the 9 zones were extraordinary, and had surpassed his expectations. He had to find a way to enter the 9 zones in advance in order to gain the initiative. The changes of the 9 zones were still ongoing, and at this stage, the various races were all unable to enter. However, once the changes stabilized, the power of rejection should disappear. If they waited until then, they would be at a disadvantage. Of course, no one knew that the 9 zones had a master, and that without his permission, the power of rejection would not disappear. The strange monster was pestering Mokai, while Chu and the other experts present were chatting and laughing. Without the demons making things difficult for the humans, no other race would take the initiative to attack them. Therefore, for the time being, everything remained calm and conflict-free. They were all waiting for the 9 zones, changes to end and the disappearance of the power of rejection. Then, the battle over the great opportunities within the 9 zones would begin. Of course, this peace did not extend to the demon race, who were suffering from the attacks of the strange black mist monster. Mokai was becoming increasingly frustrated. As more and more experts arrived from the chaos, the audience watching this show increased. Everyone did their best to steer clear of the confrontation. Those who returned were mostly World Creator realm experts. Among them, there was no lack of experts whose races had been wiped out, leaving only a scant few survivors. As for the experts who had transcended the World Creator realm, they were the minority, and were all at the early stages of its cultivation. None of them had surpassed the 30 million mile mark. Tai felt embarrassed as he saw these experts returning one after another. Many of his old acquaintances were all stronger than him. If not for the jade talisman in his hand, he would not have dared to show himself. Finally, one day, a giant walked out of the chaos. A giant race expert who had transcended the World Creator realm had appeared. Now, the giant race truly had someone to rely on. After all, Tai was not very reliable, and weaker than the other experts. 6th brother. When Tai saw who it was, he smiled awkwardly. The 6th ancestor of the giant race, Feng. Have you recovered from your injuries? I have. Tai smiled. Feng looked at Chu and did not pay much attention to the latter. The giant race expert who had the best relationship with the human race was the chief of the 18 ancestors. The next one after that was Tai, who often hung out with Chu and called him brother. However, they had briefly parted ways after an argument, though that seemed to be a thing of the past now. Feng did not want to get involved with the human race. He had only returned to protect the giant race and its interests. He was not particularly interested in the changes in the 9 zones either. After greeting the experts present, he returned to the giant race's territory and remained there. His intentions were clear. He had returned only for the giant race. No force was allowed to attack the giant race. It was also a display of strength. The giant race did not lack people who had transcended the World Creator realm. Chu Zan saw that there was nothing new to see in the chaos, so he turned his attention elsewhere, and checked out the 9 zones, which were constantly changing and expanding, though at a much slower pace. Many things, like the reincarnation cycle, were not far from being perfected. The Netherworld, Buddhist world and Monster world had all improved as well, and the structure of the 3 realms had already taken shape. In the future, the current 9 zones would become the Mortal realm. The heavenly domain would become the Heaven realm. Furthermore, if one wanted to enter the Heaven realm, one had to break through to the Daoyuan realm. The desolate ancient zone was the core of the mortal world and the door to the Heaven realm. The lower realm was the Netherworld, where the reincarnation cycle was. The Buddhist world and Monster world were relatively independent realms, connected to the human realm, the Heaven realm, and the Netherworld. The current 9 zones had expanded more than 100 times. The space was also more stable, and the heavenly Tao continued to expand along with the 9 zones. The new world was not connected to the heavenly Tao for the time being, as Chuzan had other plans for it. That being said, it was still considered part of the 9 zones. The cultivators of the 9 zones were undoubtedly the first to benefit from the great opportunities in the world. Almost every cultivator above the Emperor realm was in secluded cultivation, completely immersed in the joys of the rapid cultivation progress they were enjoying. The Daoyuan realm cultivators of the 9 zones were extending their Dao paths by almost 10 miles a day, which was unprecedented. It turned out that clearing 10 miles a day was such a happy thing. Those hidden existences also benefited from this, and either became stronger, or hastened their recovery process. Once they emerged, they would likely become heavenly Dao ancient gods, which was considered a great opportunity and fortune. After all, the upper limits of the heavenly Dao were endless, and they would grow stronger in tandem with it. Furthermore, unless the heavenly Tao was not destroyed, they would basically be immortal, and would be able to recover within the heavenly Tao. The number of living beings that broke through to the Tao realm and Daoyuan realm increased, which in turn also strengthened the heavenly Tao. This was also why the heavenly Tao had not stopped expanding and improving so far. In a sense, the improvement would never stop, though at some point it would reach a plateau, which would become the new norm. Chuzan had a feeling that when the heavenly Tao stopped expanding, the world would be completely stable, and the 3 realms would be complete. It was likely that the heavenly Tao's existence would become known to the experts of the chaos at that point, and everyone would know that the great Tao had been devoured and replaced by the heavenly Tao. It would not be long before that happened. The 9 zones would also become history. It was time to give the world a new name. Chuzan pondered for a while. Then, as he focused his mind, a name resonated within the heavenly Tao. Divine World. The 9 zones would become history, and the divine world would spread throughout the chaos. The first world in the chaos, the divine world. Once news of this got out, it would definitely cause a huge commotion in the chaos, and shake the chaos to its core. Even chaos supreme beings would take notice of this. It was inevitable that the heavenly Tao would change the chaos, and behind those changes in the heavenly Tao was him. If one did not have enough strength, they would not be able to resist this change this brought. There would definitely be experts who would try to enter the heavenly Tao and steal what was his. After this, the heavenly Tao's goal would be to devour and fuse with a supreme law of the chaos. After the first supreme law was devoured, then he would set his eyes on the other 8. 629 On the threshold of breaking through. The heavenly Tao would eventually rule over everything in the chaos, and all living beings in the chaos could only cultivate within the heavenly Tao. The entire chaos would become a single world. Of course, this was far off in the distant future when the heavenly Tao reached its apex. If there was an accident or he died, everything would be in vain. Before that, Chuzan first had to face the turmoil caused by the spread of the heavenly Tao throughout the chaos and the divine world replacing the 9 zones. Exclamation mark. Experts who had transcended the world creator realm were not sufficient to threaten the heavenly Tao, however, Chaos Supreme Realm experts would be. Still, the situation had not developed to the point where Chaos Supreme Realm experts were involved, so Chuzan was not too worried about this. By the time things reached that point, he should have broken through to the Chaos Supreme Realm. Moreover, the 100-year milestone was not far off. He would then be able to deal with the potential threat of Chaos Supreme Realm experts. As for those who had transcended the chaos, they were no longer in the chaos after transcending it. The affairs of the chaos no longer concerned them. Furthermore, Chuzan had no idea whether anyone had actually managed to transcend the chaos. The 95-year milestone soon arrived. Only 5 years remained until the century mark. At this moment, Chuzan felt he had reached the threshold of the Chaos Supreme Realm, as the 3,000 chaos bodies of creation began to grow. However, it was the beginning of achieving the Chaos Supreme Realm. The chaotic energy of creation in his body would eventually give birth to supreme laws, and he himself represented the chaos. If others wanted to break through to the Chaos Supreme Realm, they would need to comprehend a supreme law of the chaos, and then merge themselves with it. With this, one could control a portion of the supreme law of the chaos, and the power of the Tao path would transform into supreme power. Chuzan's breakthrough did not need to be like this. As long as the chaotic energy of creation in his body gave birth to supreme laws, he would possess supreme power after it developed. Moreover, the supreme laws in his body could be integrated into the 9 supreme laws of the chaos and control the power of the supreme laws. This was a special characteristic of the 3,000 chaos bodies of creation. It was not bound by the supreme laws of the chaos. The rest of the Chaos Supreme Experts' divine souls were connected to one of the 9 supreme laws of the chaos, and merged with them. In a certain sense, it was also a kind of restriction. After all, if one wanted to transcend the chaos, one had to break away from the 9 supreme laws of the chaos. This was also the reason why these Chaos Supreme Experts had never found a way to transcend the chaos. Chu Zan did not have these restrictions. Within his body, he possessed supreme power because of the supreme laws that were born from the chaotic energy of creation. There was no need for his divine soul to be connected to the supreme laws of the chaos. He could use the embryonic form of the supreme laws in his body as a medium to connect with the supreme laws of the chaos to achieve the same thing, and could disconnect the link at any time. It was precisely because of this that he was not bound, making it easier for him to transcend the chaos. Even so, the journey would be long and arduous. Furthermore, Chu Zan currently did not have a specific cultivation method to transcend the chaos. It was just that he continued to improve in this direction. After breaking through to the Chaos Supreme Realm, Chu Zan's cultivation progress would slow down significantly. Chu Zan then immersed himself in cultivation, not allowing the situation in the chaos or in the divine world to affect him. After all, as long as he did not allow it, no one could penetrate the heavenly Tao and enter the divine world, unless Chaos Supreme Realm experts appeared. The heavenly Tao was still in the process of improving, no one knew that it had already replaced the great Tao of the 9 zones. The structure of chaos had changed unknowingly. However, once the truth was revealed, and the name of the heavenly Tao spread throughout the chaos, it would definitely attract the Chaos Supreme Realm. Some might even feel that the heavenly Tao was the key to transcending the chaos. That would be something that would be fatally attractive to all Chaos Supreme Realm experts. In the chaos, many experts were waiting in silence. The 9 zones, expansion was slowing down. Although it was close to the ancient chaos world, it did not seem to have enough in it to reach the ancient chaos world. Mokai was in a sorry state. The strange monster seemed to be tireless and showed no signs of getting tired. He kept staring at Mokai and the demon race's experts. In total, the black mist monster had swallowed 6 of the demon race experts. Mokai was so angry that steam was coming out of his nostrils. However, he was helpless. He was unable to do anything to the black mist monster. Ting and the others would not help him. No one was willing to offend the black mist monster. After all, none of them could kill it. The experts of the 9 zones looked at Chu with a hint of fear. This guy did not look very strong, but the moment he returned, the whole situation changed. At this moment, a powerful aura emerged from the chaos, brimming with demonic power. A supreme expert of the demon race had returned. Mokai immediately heaved a sigh of relief, as well as the various experts of the 9 zones. Chu raised an eyebrow and looked at the chaos. Very strong. This newcomer was stronger than Mokai, and was even stronger than Mei. Boom! Suddenly, a powerful devouring force appeared, creating a terrifying vortex that engulfed the black mist monster. Sha looked at Chu. Should he make a move? Chu shook his head. If Sha attacked, Ting would attack too. It was inevitable. Bang! Bang! The black mist monster turned into a cloud of black mist. However, it still could not escape the vortex. More than half of the black mist was swallowed up. Bang! Bang! An explosive sound came from the vortex, and a wisp of black mist seemed to have been completely annihilated. The black mist that had escaped from the vortex condensed back into human form. He looked at the black vortex and roared in anger. The vortex subsided, and a demon walked over, his eyes red and cold. Mo Shi, the personal disciple of the demon ancestor, and Mo Chi's senior brother. The black mist monster roared and glared at Mo Shi, but there was also a hint of fear in his eyes. Bang! Bang! The black mist exploded, and within the chaos, a murky color appeared. There seemed to be a special power of the laws lingering around it. It spread toward Mo Shi, who snorted coldly. He raised his hand and clapped. The vortex reappeared and swallowed that murky substance into the vortex. In an instant, Mo Shi's expression turned pale. The vortex actually showed signs of contamination. Boom! Mo Shi waved his hand, and the vortex disappeared into the chaos. The strange monster could not be killed, but he could be temporarily expelled. With the black mist monster gone, many people turned to look at Chu. Mo Shi had returned, so the human race was going to face a crisis again. Once the demon race made their move, many experts would follow suit. Mokai did not hesitate and attacked. Chu, you deserve to die. Boom! Shua! A saber beam flashed through the chaos. Sha had made his move. Tai looked at Moshi helplessly. He took out the jade talisman and gave it to Chu. This is for you. As soon as the jade talisman was taken out, everyone's expression changed. That faint might exuded by the jade talisman felt suffocating. Moshi's expression changed as well. Giant race, are you siding with the humans? He asked coldly. In the past, the first ancestor of the giant race had protected the human race and imparted a body tempering technique to them. I am good friends with Chu. It's personal and doesn't involve the giant race, Tai said coldly. Chu looked at the jade talisman in Tai's hand. He could sense the terrifying power contained within it. Powerful as it was impossible for the human race to survive this situation with just this. The top experts of the major races all had their own trump cards. It was not impossible to offset the power of the jade talisman by paying a price. Furthermore, Chu could sense that although Moshi was wary, he was not too afraid. Obviously, he was prepared. Even if the jade talisman could kill Moshi, it would not change anything. On the contrary, it would provoke the powerful experts of the 9 territories and encourage them to pay a great price to destroy the human race. Tai, take back the jade talisman. The human race won't go this far. Chu shook his head and smiled. Tai was displeased. When did you become so wishy-washy? You've always been the one scamming treasures from me. Why don't you want one when I give it to you? Chu looked at the silly giant and laughed. Tai, since you know that, you should also understand that if I don't want your treasure, it means I have the confidence to solve this problem. Tai looked at him in confusion. Chu was known for his flawless plans and schemes. However, with his current strength, could he really solve the current dilemma? In the face of absolute power, schemes would not be that useful. Tai thought for a moment and put away the jade talisman. He had decided that if Chu was in a dangerous situation where he would definitely die, he would use this jade talisman to save him. He could not care too much about the other humans. Sha and Mokai were already engaged in a great battle. Moshi looked at Chu. I'd like to see how you're going to deal with this situation. With a wave of his hand, a powerful vortex appeared, and a terrifying devouring power swept toward the human race's experts. Chu laughed and said, why bother? Many experts from the 9 zones were eager to join in, including Ting, whose body was already starting to surge with power. Chu looked at him. If you make a move, your sister might punish you. The lightning around Ting's body ceased to circulate. His face was filled with anger. The human race's experts were about to be swallowed by the vortex. A layer of ripples appeared, like water, blocking the vortex and offsetting the devouring power. Moshi looked up. A coquettish woman floated over elegantly. A faint ripple of water appeared on her finger, exuding the power of her Dao path. When they saw who had intervened, everyone was stunned. Is the Water God Valley sect going to interfere in the affairs of the 9 zones? The one who spoke up was Piao. It was not a matter between the demon race and the human race, but a matter involving the races of the 9 zones. Both the demon race and the human race came from the 9 zones, so Piao classified this as an internal matter between the races of the 9 zones. The Water God Valley sect was a force of the chaos. They had crossed the line by interfering in the affairs of the 9 zones. The woman did not stop. There were water ripples around her body, like a fairy in the water. She was an unparalleled beauty. As she blocked Moshi's devouring vortex, she looked at Piao and smiled. This has nothing to do with the Water God Valley sect. Besides, I'm also a part of the 9 zones. She looked at the elegant and handsome Chu. He's my man, so what's wrong with me standing up for my man? Everyone was stunned. Even Moshi stopped attacking. Even Hong and the other human race's experts were all stunned. Ancestor Chu was too good at seducing people. He had actually seduced such a powerful woman. Piao was stunned. He recalled how Chu had called her big sister Piao and had given her some treasures. At that time, was Chu trying to seduce her? B-starred. Ting was so angry that lightning crackled all around him. Chu, didn't you and my sister, he said angrily. He was going crazy. This B***starred, how many people had he hooked up with? The woman smiled elegantly and gracefully. She took out a folding fan, opened it, and gently fanned herself. Oh, about sister she knows. The smile on Chu's face was very innocent. Ting was so angry that he almost vomited blood. All of the experts were stunned. This was especially true for the experts from the other races who were around the same age as Ting. Did goddess she know that Chu had seduced another woman? She actually did not care. What was going on? Back then, Yao had pursued she but was rejected. If he knew about this, he would probably vomit blood. Of course, there was no lack of people who were envious of Chu. His strength was average, but he was able to hook up with so many female experts. Moreover, they did not mind him fooling around with other women. Was Chu so charming? Hong made up his mind that, after this, he would ask Ancestor Chu for advice on how to hook up with female experts. For the prosperity of the human race, he would make the sacrifice. On the other side, Mo Kai and Sha had stopped fighting. Everything seemed to have entered a strange stalemate. Unless Ting or Long Hai also attacked, the situation would not change. From the looks of it, the possibility was not high. Long Hai was reading a book, and as for Ting, his sister had been seduced, and he was about to go crazy with anger, but he did not dare to make a move. If he angered his sister, the consequences would not be good. Piao did not seem to have any intention of making a move. There was another expert who had surpassed the world creator realm, but he was slightly weaker, so he would not be able to tilt the balance of the situation. Now, they could only wait for the other experts to return. Chu was carefree and looked in all directions with an evil gaze. His posture was natural and unrestrained. Mo Shi's expression was dark. Mo Chi's expression was extremely ugly. There was a hint of fear in his eyes as he looked at the woman. Mo Kai was weaker than the other party, and even Mo Shi did not have the confidence to win. She was the #1 genius of the Water God Valley sect, Shui Lian. It was rumored that the Water God Valley sect was founded by an ancient chaos god. Many powerful forces in the chaos had come for the 9 zones, change this time. Other than Shui Lian, there were also other female experts. The experts of the 9 zones could not help but look at the remaining female experts. Were any among them Chu's lovers as well? They all cursed inwardly. How did this B***starred Chu hook up with these female experts? What was even more ridiculous was, these female experts were actually willing to be on good terms with him despite knowing that he had other lovers. It would be fine if Chu was a supreme expert, but he was not. Was his cultivation method related to seduction? Boom. From the chaos, another powerful aura emerged. Another world creator realm expert arrived, who was also from one of the races of the 9 zones. However, despite this, Mo Shi did not start fighting. He continued to wait. Chu was all smiles. After that, more and more experts returned. The 9 zones now had 3 more experts who had transcended the world creator realm. Even if they were weaker than Sha in a one-on-one fight, they could still gain the upper hand if they joined forces. Mo Shi was still waiting. The experts of the 9 zones were also waiting patiently. The world was expanding, but it had not stabilized yet. The power of rejection did not disappear either. There was no rush to deal with the human race. All the races had a tacit understanding, which was that they could not allow the humans to enter the 9 zones. The human race was blessed by the Great Tao, so their chances of entering the 9 zones and obtaining opportunities were far higher than other races. The two sides had been fighting for a long time, so if the human race truly rose up, all of the other races would be suppressed. This was inevitable. For example, the human race had become the overlord of the 9 zones and had almost unified the 9 zones. Now, the descendants of the various races in the 9 zones were all suppressed by the human race to the point of suffocation. In fact, some of the races that had stayed in the 9 zones had gone extinct. More and more experts continued to arrive, which increased the amount of pressure on Hong and the others. Only Chu remained calm, despite the fact that no other human race supreme experts had returned. Even Shui Lian felt the pressure. Mo Shi was no weaker than her. If they were to fight, she might even be at a disadvantage. On the human side, Sha was the only one who had transcended the world creator realm. He glanced at Chu, who was still as calm as ever. This put his heart more at ease. Ancestor Chu probably still had more trump cards up his sleeve. As more and more experts appeared, the atmosphere became more and more solemn. It was like the calm before the storm. Piao frowned. Where did Chu get his confidence from? Could it be that he had found a powerful backer? Was that even possible? Could it be that he was really confident despite being surrounded by the various races? Even if the celestial and immortal race did not participate, enough demon race supreme experts had returned to completely overrun the human race's forces. Mo Shi looked at Chu in silence. He was known as the first ancestor of the human race, but he was not too strong. However, he was unparalleled in his schemes and was good at seducing female experts. The battle against the human race was about to break out. Ji had been watching silently, and did not show himself. He was focused on comprehending the insights within the jade talisman Chuzan had given him. His strength had increased. These experts had all come for the changes in the 9 zones. However, none of them knew that these changes were related to the Supreme Lord. How could they seize the opportunities in the 9 zones without the Supreme Lord's permission? That being said, he did not know why Chu was so confident. Naturally, he could sense how extraordinary Chu was, so he did not believe that Chu was weak. Chu had most definitely transcended the world creator realm. However, it did not give him any sense of oppression, so Chu was likely weaker than he was. Under such circumstances, how could he be so confident? Even Ji did not have the confidence to deal with so many experts who had transcended the world creator realm. He watched silently, waiting for the right moment to strike. Once he made a move, he would definitely kill someone. He had disappeared for such a long time, so the other races had probably forgotten about him. Perhaps it was time to bring back those memories, and help them to recall the fear they had felt in the past. Chu Zan woke up from his state of comprehension. Within his body, the 3,000 chaos bodies of creation had given birth to the embryonic form of the supreme laws of the chaos. His Tao path surrounded them, and acted like a bridge. At this moment, his entire being was undergoing some sort of transformation. He looked up and saw the 9 supreme laws of the chaos, which maintained the existence of the chaos. With a single thought, a supreme law in his divine soul directly connected with a supreme law in the chaos. It felt as if all living beings in the chaos were under his control. Be it their Tao paths or worlds, they were all like bubbles that would burst with a single poke. His body began to generate supreme power. After 98 years, Chu Zan had broken through to the chaos supreme realm. At this moment, Chu Zan deeply realized the power and horror of the chaos supreme realm. After retrieving the connection with the supreme law of the chaos, Chu Zan continued to observe the embryonic supreme law in the massive chaotic energy of creation. Even though it had already grown a bit and had given birth to supreme power, and even though it could connect to the supreme laws of the chaos and control part of their power, they were still weak and were like seedlings. Chu Zan examined the changes in his body. His strength had been raised to a terrifying level. How terrifying would it be to transcend the chaos then? Only by breaking through to the Chaos Supreme Realm could one understand the gap between transcending the World Creator Realm and the Chaos Supreme Realm. A Chaos Supreme Realm expert could easily kill all those who had transcended the World Creator Realm within the chaos. No matter how many of them there were, they would not be able to pose a threat to a Chaos Supreme Realm expert. He was truly at the peak of the chaos, above all living beings in the chaos, and in control of the supreme laws of the chaos. After breaking through to the Chaos Supreme Realm, Chu Zan's cultivation speed suddenly dropped. He was only slowly improving in the direction of transcending the chaos. This was the natural ability of the 3,000 chaos bodies of creation to transcend the chaos. However, without a corresponding cultivation method, he would not be able to actively cultivate in that direction. Chu Zan could only wait for the 100-year milestone reward and hope to receive a cultivation method that would allow him to transcend the chaos. You remained in seclusion, yet broke through to the Chaos Supreme Realm. You became the fastest cultivator to break through the Chaos Supreme Realm in the history of the chaos. You are also the only cultivator to break through to the Chaos Supreme Realm in 100 years. You have been rewarded with the experience of transcending the chaos. The system's notification rang out. He had set a new record, so it was inevitable that the system's reward would be triggered. To Chu Zan's surprise, the reward this time was to experience transcending chaos. What was it like to transcend the chaos? This time, he might understand, and perhaps would find out if there had been anyone who had transcended the chaos. According to Chu Zan's speculations, even if there were those who transcended the chaos, they were definitely not in the chaos. Chu Zan received his reward. By experiencing transcending the chaos, he would gain insights into the process. Boom! Chu Zan only felt that everything was sublimating. Be it the chaos or the world, they were all collapsing like bubbles around him. A terrifying and unknown power appeared out of nowhere. It seemed to be resisting his attempt to transcend the chaos, and was trying to stop him from improving. Chu Zan experienced this process. Perhaps this was the kind of tribulation one had to face in order to transcend the chaos. Only by surpassing it could one transcend the chaos. He wondered if he would encounter something similar when he attempted to transcend the chaos in the future. Would his 3,000 chaos bodies of creation allow him to circumvent this? At a certain moment, Chu Zan felt like he had broken through some kind of restriction, and arrived at an unknown space. There was nothing here, it was as if everything was blank. However, if it was blank, how could such a special place exist? He opened his eyes. He looked down. He saw a huge gray sphere that was slowly expanding. Was that the chaos? The chaos kept expanding and expanding. This was also the reason why he felt that the chaos was boundless. The chaos was always expanding and becoming bigger. When chaos became bigger, it naturally meant that chaos was becoming stronger. Chuzan silently looked at the chaos below. This was what it meant to transcend the chaos. Where was he after transcending the chaos? Chuzan looked to the side of the chaos and saw that there was also a gray mass that was constantly expanding. Another chaos. He looked around and saw 9 different chaoses. Chuzan looked at the chaos below him, which was where he was now. Beside it was another chaos, which was also expanding. According to how things were progressing, the 2 chaoses would collide and merge one day. Chuzan now understood a few things. Originally, this mysterious domain had more than 9 chaoses. However, in the end, they collided and fused, leaving only 9 behind. Perhaps, after countless years, only 1 chaos would exist in this mysterious domain. His will began to return. From the corner of his eyes, Chuzan saw an unknown place in the mysterious domain. However, he was too far away to see it clearly. Suddenly, he saw a huge head floating outside one of the chaoses. At the center of the head, there was an eye. There was still some life left in the huge eye, but it was very dim. What was that? Chuzan's heart trembled. Was that an existence that had transcended the chaos and was on the verge of death? Chuzan's will returned. In his mind, he was thinking about that huge head. There was still some spirit left in that single eye. Was it severely injured and on the verge of death when it transcended chaos? Chuzan did not know if that head had succeeded or not. It had indeed left the chaos, and entered the mysterious domain. However, there was only a little bit of energy left in that eye, and it seemed as if it was about to die. Chuzan did not know if that mysterious existence could persist. If it died in the end, it also meant that it had failed to transcend the chaos. Even if it survived, would it be able to recover from such a serious injury in the mysterious domain? In a corner of the mysterious domain, the outline of an unknown place could be vaguely seen. What was that? Chuzan fell into a state of deep thought. How did the mysterious domain outside the chaos exist? It supported the growth and expansion of chaos. Also, what was beyond the mysterious realm? Only those who transcended the chaos would discover these secrets. Chuzan had transcended chaos and seen the essence of chaos, which was constantly expanding. One day, it would collide with another chaos, and finally merge together to form a new chaos. If that was the case, what would the living beings in the 2 chaoses face? It was bound to be another calamity. Every time the chaoses collided and fused, a new chaos would be created and a new chaos would be created. 9 Daoyuan was a great Dao era. In that case, was there a chaos era? Chuzan pondered. How long had the supreme existences of this chaos existed? Could it be that there was a supreme existence during the last collision and fusion of chaoses? Was the Lord of Chaos one of them? Did he experience the collision and fusion of chaoses? Was a chaos collision equivalent to a chaos era? Chuzan estimated how long it would take for 2 chaoses to collide with each other. Was the chaos currently at the end of a chaos era? There were some changes in the chaos. Perhaps this was related to that. Even though the 2 chaoses had yet to collide, the closer they got to each other, there would be changes triggered. The collision of chaoses was both a calamity and an opportunity. Chuzan sighed. I wonder if those supreme existences know about this. Did they notice some unusual changes? They probably did not. After all, without transcending chaos, how would one know that it was about the collision and fusion of chaoses? This chaos would not be able to collide with another chaos in a short period of time. As the distance between the 2 sides decreased, some changes would appear in the chaos. Chuzan was not worried that the collision of chaoses would bring about any special changes. They were still far from a collision. Moreover, he had already broken through to the Chaos Supreme Realm. Even if the 2 chaoses collided, Supreme Chaos Realm experts should be able to survive. He might even obtain an opportunity to transcend the chaos. Moreover, Chuzan estimated that he would have transcended the chaos by the time the 2 chaoses collided. After breaking through to the Supreme Chaos Realm, he was truly full of confidence. The Heavenly Tao also gradually stabilized. The disappearance of the Great Tao of the 9 zones and the birth of the Heavenly Tao would become known to all living beings in the chaos. Moreover, from now on, the 9 zones would no longer exist. It was now the Divine World, which was divided into 3 realms. Now, the heavenly domain had truly become the heavenly realm. To enter the heavenly realm, one had to break through to the Daoyuan realm. Furthermore, they had to undergo certain tests. The Daoyuan realm cultivators of the heavenly realm would not be able to interfere with the lower realms at will. This was a long process, the beginning of a new era, and something that could not be completed in a day. The world also had reincarnation. Life and death had the cycle of reincarnation, while yin and yang were divided into two realms. Boom! Suddenly, a powerful aura erupted from the chaos outside the world. Chu Zan sat on his chair leisurely. He brewed a pot of tea and used the Chaos Dao mirror to observe what was going on outside. He did not look at it directly. Instead, it was like watching a movie when he used the Chaos Dao mirror. This was life. Beyond the world, within the chaos. The situation had changed drastically. A man emerged from the chaos. Miao. Miao had already transcended the world creator realm. Even though he had just broken through, he was still stronger than the weaker cultivators present who had transcended the world creator realm. Miao's appearance caused Chu's expression to turn ugly. Among the immortal race, Miao was the one who targeted the human race the most. Piao frowned but did not say anything. He just watched silently. Where is he? Miao looked at Chu coldly. I don't know who you're talking about. Chu's expression did not look good. His eyes were cold. You don't know about Qin. Killing intent condensed around Miao's body. Who is Qin? Chu frowned. He roughly knew who Qin was. What do the grudges of your generation have to do with us? Facing Miao's overbearing attitude, Chu's expression also turned cold. Why? Miao unsheathed his sword, his aura bursting forth as the power of his Dao path revolved around him. I'd like to see if he's really going to sit back and watch the human race being destroyed. The sword in Miao's hand released a terrifying killing intent. His expression was ferocious. Piao frowned. In the end, she did not say anything or try to dissuade him. Chu was also furious. He was not completely clueless about some of Miao's matters. He turned to Mei. Miao is one of the main culprits behind the extinction of the heavenly fox race, he said coldly. Don't you want revenge? What, are you afraid of the immortal ancestor's direct disciple? When Mei heard this, the 9 tails behind her fanned out, like 9 Dao paths. It was you, Miao said coldly. What does the extinction of the heavenly fox race have to do with me? Qin is the murderer. Chu laughed coldly. Miao, you stole the heavenly fox race's fate and tried in vain to interfere with Yun's matters. In the end, you suffered a backlash and caused the punishment of the great Dao to descend. That's why the heavenly fox race didn't survive the great calamity. You are the one who did all these evil things. If you weren't unwilling to give up and didn't try to change Yun's will and gain her favor, the heavenly fox race wouldn't have declined during the great calamity. How could Yun have fallen if that had not happened? Miao's expression was dark and his face was twisted. If he didn't deceive Yun, all of this wouldn't have happened. You humans are cunning and shameless. You should be destroyed. He pointed the sword at Chu, and a terrifying surge of power erupted. Shui Lian stood in front of Chu, negating the pressure of that oppressive aura. Chu, I thought you knew nothing. Why do you know now? Chu sneered. I don't know, but someone else does. Your aunt has told me the reason, he said, looking at Mei. Mei's expression was somewhat complicated. Her aunt was actually Chu's lover, which left her speechless. However, the death of the heavenly fox race should be related to Miao. There were traces of the immortals interfering in the matter of the heavenly fox race back then. Looking back at it now, there was no doubt about that. Miao, you deserve to die. Mei made her move. Boom. The power of his great Dao erupted, pressing down on Miao. Yi Gang had broken through and transcended the great Dao of heaven and earth, so his strength was not as good as Mei's. Miao's face was ferocious at this moment. Idiot, why are you being deceived by the human race like Yun? Humans are shameless and cunning. How can we trust them? With a wave of his sword, boundless sword beams swept out like waves. However, he was still suppressed. Miao was worthy of being the immortal ancestor's direct disciple. Even though he was at a disadvantage, Mei could not suppress him in a short time. Mo Kai, Mo Shi, why aren't you attacking? Exterminate the human race. Miao roared with a ferocious expression. Piao sighed and did not say anything. Miao, in the end, could not let go. His mentality had already descended down the wrong path. After his breakthrough this time, his obsession had taken over. Haha, then let's do it. Mo Shi laughed. With a wave of his hand, a vortex appeared. Chu, I'd like to see how many experts you've roped in to help you. Those who want to interfere, he continued coldly, think carefully about whether you want to be enemies with the 9 zones. Miao attacked. Mo Shi made his move. Mo Kai and the others who had transcended the World Creator realm also attacked. The Immortal race expert who had transcended the World Creator realm also attacked. It was obvious that the other party was on good terms with Miao. However, Piao did not act, and neither did Ting. The experts of the fiery phoenixes stood to the side and did not interfere either. It was the same for Long Hai and the dragon experts. Without Huang Long's permission, they did not dare to act. The terrifying power of many Dao paths surged toward the humans. Tai was extremely nervous. The jade talisman appeared in his hand. Let's see what other tricks Chu has up his sleeve. If he doesn't have any, I'll have to use the jade talisman. More than 10 cultivators who had transcended the World Creator realm were attacking. How could they resist? Chu's expression was calm and he did not move. Boom! 2 experts from the forces of the chaos suddenly attacked and blocked one of the experts who were attacking the human race. On the ancient chaos world's side, an expert also took action and stopped another one. As expected, Chu had roped in some experts to help him. However, it was not enough. Mo Shi's aura continued to burst forth. Shui Lian barely managed to resist, but the power of her Dao path was shaking. Clearly, she was not as strong as Mo Shi. Boom! Sha made his move. He swung his saber and blocked 2 weaker experts who had transcended the World Creator realm. Chu waved his hand, and a flag fluttered out, forming a wall of power, blocking the remaining attacks. However, the flag shook and even started to tear. This defensive treasure would not be able to last long. Chu, is that it? Mo Shi's aura grew stronger and stronger. It was almost impossible for Shui Lian to resist him. The small flag was a defensive treasure, but it was obviously impossible for it to resist the attacks of so many experts. Soon, it was on the verge of being destroyed. Chu was not flustered, and his expression remained calm. He looked at Mo Shi and smiled. Mo Shi, you're still lacking. I'll only take you seriously if Mo Yao comes over. Arrogant. Mo Shi was enraged. Mo Yao was a notorious powerful demon among the demon race. There was a period of time in the 9 zones when all the races trembled in fear when they heard Mo Yao's name. He was far more powerful than Mo Shi. Chu, what kind of strength did he possess? How dare he say that only Mo Yao was worthy of his attention? Boom! The vortex turned into a terrifying fist that came straight for Chu. The water curtain-like defense that Shui Lian had condensed was constantly shaking, as if it would collapse at any time. Wisps of demonic power seeped through the water curtain. Shui Lian let out a soft cry, and the water rippled, once again blocking the attack. Boom! Mo Shi threw punch after punch. Each punch contained his terrifying devouring power, which continuously devoured the power of Shui Lian's Dao path. At this moment, 9 rays of light descended from the chaos-like 9 Dao paths. With a loud boom, they struck Mo Shi's fist. Mo Shi took a few steps back and looked over. A magnificent figure walked over leisurely. The 9 tails that bloomed behind her were like 9 Dao paths. Zan, you want to interfere? Mo Shi's eyes glowed with a ferocious light. Zan looked at Mei, who was fighting with Miao, and said gently, in this world, the only people worthy of my concern were those 2. With a wave of her hand, the power of her Dao path erupted, and with a loud bang, it directly crushed the attack of an expert who had transcended the World Creator realm. Piao's expression turned serious. Zan had actually reached this level. Mo Shi felt pressured by Zan. The other party had surpassed the 20 million mile mark. Chu, is this the basis of your confidence? Mo Shi looked at Chu coldly, his eyes filled with contempt and disdain. A playboy who seduced female experts and relied on them. I've said it before, unless Mo Yao and the others return, you are not worthy of my attention. Chu Feng smiled indifferently. Is that so? Mo Shi snorted coldly. He turned back and looked at the ancient chaos world. Make your move. One person from the ancient chaos world was not much weaker than Zan. Zan looked at Chu with a tender gaze. She waved her hand and the power of her Dao path appeared. She then started fighting with the one from the ancient chaos world. Although she had the upper hand, it was not easy to suppress that person. Mo Shi and the others who had transcended the World Creator realm attacked again. Mo Kai headed straight for Sha. Boom! This time, the battle was getting more and more intense. Chu was still calm. He looked at the defensive flag that was continuously tearing and was on the verge of collapsing, but he was still not anxious. It seemed like he was still waiting for someone. Tai was extremely anxious. He had almost activated the Jade Talisman a few times. He felt some regret in his heart. If he had known this would happen, he would have been more shameless and asked Taoist brother for a few more jade talismans. Sha was fighting against 3 cultivators who had transcended the world creator realm, including Mo Kai. After fighting for a while, Sha's Dao path shook, and he staggered backward. There were many wounds on his body, and his breathing was labored. Hong and the rest were extremely anxious. However, the difference in strength was too great. They could not help at all. If they got a little closer, they would be annihilated by the shockwaves from the battle. At this moment, they truly realized how weak they were. Even if they were the top existences among the world creator realm experts, faced with those who had transcended the world creator realm, they were like ants. Chu was still calm. It was as if he did not notice that Sha was in danger. Piao frowned. Who was Chu waiting for? A small chaos mountain appeared silently. There was a man standing on the mountain. He looked at Sha's battlefield, raised his hand, and threw a punch at Mo Kai. Ji had made his appearance. He did not know what trump cards Chu had, but none of that was important. He was going to make a move and kill Mo Kai. He had returned. Were the various races ready for his comeback? In the past, he had killed so many people in the 9 zones that all the races had been terrified and were forced to summon the experts from the chaos back. Ji then faked his death to escape into the chaos. Had they forgotten about his existence? Today, he would kill a personal disciple of the demon ancestor to announce his return. Ji appeared very suddenly. Piao noticed, and the rest of the experts also noticed him. They were all stunned. Why had they failed to detect his presence before he appeared? Mo Chi's intuition told him that danger was coming. Roar! An unprecedented crisis struck. He roared and his demonic body expanded to the size of a small world. The terrifying power of his Dao path surrounded his huge body. A large black saber with surging demonic power appeared in his hand, which he then swung. This was his strongest attack. Then, cracks appeared on Mo Chi's massive body, and the power of his Dao path seemed to have been sucked dry. An extreme power suddenly appeared, turning from invisible to tangible. Like a sharp arrow, it pierced through space and was headed straight for Mo Kai. Boom! Mo Chi's saber shattered. PFF'd. Mo Chi's huge body trembled as countless cracks appeared on it. His face was filled with disbelief. He looked at the person standing on the Chaos Mountain. The man just stood there without any spiritual power fluctuations. He did not exude any aura, and looked completely ordinary. Mo Chi's body continued cracking. Then, at a certain moment, it exploded with a bang. His Dao path and world collapsed, and the heavenly phenomenon that accompanied the fall of a Dao path's destruction filled the surroundings. It had all happened too quickly. None of the experts present could react in time. Even Chu was shocked. Ji's appearance here was beyond his expectations. Silence. Mo Kai had fallen, an expert who had transcended the world creator realm, and was a personal disciple of the demon ancestor, had actually fallen. He was killed in one strike. The 2 experts who were fighting alongside Mo Kai against Sha were frightened and immediately fled. It was too terrifying. Even someone as powerful as Mo Kai had been killed in one strike. All of the fighting stopped instantly. Unexpectedly, the first expert to die was not from the human race, but the demon race. Chu and Sha were both surprised. It was actually Ji. Moreover, his strength had reached such a terrifying level. He had killed Mo Kai in one strike. The extreme Dao was indeed extremely powerful. Even the 2 of them thought that Ji had already died. After all, when they tried to save Ji, they were surrounded by experts from the various races and failed in the end. However, Ji had reappeared, and he was stronger than Sha. Ji. Some people from the 9 zones were in disbelief. Ji was the most vicious person from the human race, and an incomparably powerful existence. He had created the extreme Dao. Many of the descendants of the powerful experts of the 9 zones who were highly valued had fallen at Ji's hands. In the end, the Immortal, Celestial, and Demon races attacked and surrounded him. However, they believed that they had killed him back then. How was that possible? Back then, they had destroyed his Dao path. Why did he not die? No one would have thought that the one who died was just Ji's incarnation. His true body had already left. Of course, after separating a portion of his extreme Dao and turning it into an incarnation, his true body was extremely weak for a long time. Hong looked at Ji with a complicated expression. This was because Ji's ferocity and brutality had caused the human race to suffer the wrath of the various races in Hong's era. The human race was almost exterminated. Hong's rise could be said to be fraught with difficulties, but he eventually led the human race out of that predicament and became the 4th ancestor of the human race. Each of the 10 ancestors of the human race had their own unique traits. They all had the followers among the human race's geniuses of their respective eras. Most of the human race's experts today were the supreme geniuses who followed Chu, Sha, and Hong, while the rest were geniuses who followed the other ancestors. Even Yu, who had already fallen, had his followers, as did Wu. Only Ji had no followers. His extreme Tao was difficult to cultivate, and had many stringent requirements. Furthermore, he had gone all out and massacred the experts of the various races, eventually causing the deaths of his former followers due to vengeance. As expected of the most vicious man of the human race. The moment he returned, he killed the demon ancestor's personal disciple. His strength was also terrifyingly powerful. Ji slowly flew down from the Chaos Mountain. When he did, the Chaos Mountain turned into dust and disappeared. The experts of the 9 zones all gathered together with serious expressions. Mo Shi's eyes were bloodshot as he stared at the man with fear. Piao's expression was also solemn. The human race had actually produced such a powerful existence. Was this why Chu was so confident? Ji did not exude any aura as he approached, but there seemed to be a trace of something special around him. Didn't you want to fight? Wasn't everyone clamoring to exterminate the human race? Ji's voice was calm. He flew over and turned his head to look at Miao and Mei. He raised his hand and pointed a finger at Miao. So what if he's a direct disciple of the immortal ancestor? Miao's expression changed. His strength was inferior to Mo Chi's. At this moment, a golden rope appeared in his hand. Boom! The golden rope transformed into a giant dragon that coiled around Miao, protecting him. The golden rope had been given to him by the immortal ancestor to deal with prison Tao ancient god. At this moment, Ji's attack gave him a strong sense of danger. Therefore, he had no choice but to use this treasure. Boom! The golden rope shook and trembled, but in the end, it blocked Ji's attack. Miao's expression was extremely unsightly. The resentment that had been suppressed in his heart for the human race completely erupted at this moment. He channeled the power of his Tao path and poured it into the golden rope, activating the immortal ancestor's power within it. Go! The golden rope flew toward Ji. This treasure was something that could bind prison Tao ancient god, and Miao did not believe that Ji was more powerful than the latter. In the distance, Chu's expression changed. The power of the immortal ancestor. However, Ji did not panic at all. The golden rope had locked onto him, and he could not escape. He raised his hand, and a special power started circulating. The power of his extreme Tao seemed to have entered a special state. His figure gradually became illusory. Shua, the golden rope bound Ji's illusionary body. On the other side, Mo Shi made his move the moment Ji was bound. A terrifying power erupted. A water screen appeared as Shui Lian hurriedly tried to stop him. Chu's figure moved, and he was about to personally take action. Then, Ji's body shimmered, and the golden rope that bound his body suddenly disappeared without a trace. No one knew where it had gone. Ji's figure reappeared. In the divine world, in the netherworld's reincarnation cycle, a golden rope suddenly appeared around Ji's incarnation and firmly bound him. At the critical moment, Ji's main body had swapped places with his incarnation, which had taken his place before he was bound by the golden rope. The golden rope contained immense power, and could bind even a middle-stage expert who had transcended the world creator realm. After all, it contained the power of the immortal ancestor. Based on this, Chu Zan could infer that the latter had likely exceeded the 70 million mile mark, and not by a small margin either. If the immortal ancestor had reached such a level, then the celestial and demon ancestors were likely of similar strength. They were all top experts who had transcended the world creator realm. In the reincarnation cycle, Ji's incarnation was silently enduring the restraints of the golden rope. At the same time, he activated the power of the reincarnation cycle and began to wear down the power in the golden rope. Han Yu was stunned. Seeing the golden rope, he sensed a familiar aura. He started to think. The immortal ancestor was also an expert who had left the 9 zones. With a thought, the golden rope binding his body fell off and lost its power. Many thanks, my lord. He hurriedly thanked Chu Zan. In the chaos, Miao had been unable to restrain Ji despite using the golden rope. Moreover, the golden rope had disappeared without a trace. He was stunned. That was his master's item, and contained a portion of his power. It could even bind prison Tao ancient god. How did Ji avoid it? Moreover, where did the golden rope go? Piao's expression was solemn. There seemed to have been some kind of exchange just now, as if the golden rope's restraint had been placed on something or someone else instead. What kind of technique was that? The fact that it even managed to deal with the golden rope was frightening. If the immortal ancestor was here, I would definitely retreat. However, you want to bind me with just that rope. He looked at Meow coldly. He took a step forward and looked at the various experts of the 9 zones. I'm right here. If you want a fight, then come and get it. Silence. None of the experts from the various races made a move. They were afraid of him. He was too strong. The extreme Tao was too unfathomable. Piao moved in front of Meow to protect him, looking extremely alert. Ji looked at her and then at the demons. He raised his hand, and a sword appeared in his hand. The sword was formed by the power of his extreme Tao. There was no sword intent, nor any powerful killing intent. However, it was extremely sharp. Mo Shi's expression turned serious as a vortex appeared around his body. Ji gave him a feeling of extreme danger. It might even be a fatal attack. Shua, a few figures who had transcended the world creator realm appeared beside Mo Shi, and the power of their Tao paths also appeared. At this time, they had to join forces. They had never imagined that the third ancestor of the human race would be so terrifying. Since we've already made our move, it's too late to retreat. Let's attack together. Mo Shi looked at the expert from the ancient chaos world. The other party's expression was solemn. He moved next to Mo Shi. They were going to join forces to resist Ji. Sha stepped forward with his saber, as his aura began to surge. Zan and Shui Lian also made their moves. Mei attacked Meow again. Piao frowned and looked back at Meow, and then at Ji, hesitating. Then, Ji swung his sword. The power of his extreme Tao tore space apart. At this moment, his aura surged, and quickly surpassed his previous cultivation level. Sha also attacked, as did Zan and Shui Lian. The experts led by Mo Shi attacked one after another, and the power of their Tao path surged. Boom! Mo Shi's side was forced back a few steps as blood dripped from their foreheads. Mo Shi's eyes were filled with shock. Even with so many people joining forces, they were still injured. The power of that sword strike was extremely sharp. It pierced through the power of their Tao paths and injured them. Then, just as Ji was about to attack again, from the chaos, a terrifying and ferocious aura emerged. Endless malice filled the air. Those below the world creator realm all felt a sense of fear emerged from the bottom of their hearts for no reason. Hong and the rest's expressions changed. Was it that rumored existence? Zan's expression was extremely solemn. She and Shui Lian returned to Chu's side. Sha retreated to Hong's side and activated the power of his Tao path to protect the human race's experts. Tai gulped. He had always been bold, but at this moment, his heart was filled with fear. He knew that this was because he was too weak and was affected by the other party. He hurriedly shook the jade talisman in his hand, releasing a powerful aura to resist the evil intent. Humans, you lowly insects. I can't believe you have a decent expert. It's a good thing, though. He should taste better. The voice carried a sense of malice, ear-piercing and unpleasant to the ears, causing one to feel a sense of fear. Mo Shi heaved a sigh of relief. The experts on his side also heaved a sigh of relief. Piao and Ting's expressions turned serious. The 3 races had always been in conflict, especially with the demons, who were arrogant, overbearing, and incomparably brutal. Most of the time, they did not care about the consequences and did not fear death. If there was not an expert to intimidate them, they might do something without considering the consequences. A terrifying being with worm-like hair and a row of weird eyes on both sides of his ribs had arrived. A demon. Among the demon ancestors' personal disciples, he was the most brutal and most infamous. His power far surpassed Mo Kai and Mo Shi. As soon as the demon descended, Chu's expression became serious. Mo Shi bowed respectfully. Mo Shi pays his respects to senior brother Mo Yao. Even though they were both fellow disciples, he was still afraid of Mo Yao. Getting injured like this, you've damaged Master's reputation, Mo Yao said coldly. Mo Shi did not dare to reply. 637 Mo Yao Part 2. Chu Zan looked at the demon and nodded. He was indeed worthy of his fierce reputation. It looked terrifying and ferocious. There were 4 eyes on his face, and a row of eyes on each side of his ribs, and bone spikes coming out of his elbows. He was not weak either, having reached the middle stage of those who had transcended the world creator realm. His Tao path exceeded 30 million miles in length. Exclamation mark! He was probably no weaker than Prison Tao Ancient God. When Mo Yao, and an endless evil aura filled the air. In an instant, many of the world creator realm experts left, and those who were below that realm fled to the ancient chaos world. This was Mo Yao. Ji's expression became serious. The power of his extreme Tao began to surge. Chu's expression was grave. Of course, Mo Yao's strength was still within his acceptable range. How dare a human be so impudent? Mo Yao stared coldly at Ji and Chu. Then, he turned to look at Piao and Ting. All of you, attack. Otherwise, don't blame me. HMPH. Mo Yao, you don't have the right to order us around. Piao snorted coldly. Mo Yao's smile looked cruel and cold. Piao, if you don't make a move, then I might decide to eat you instead. Piao's face was ashen. Ting's face darkened, but he did not say anything. Mo Yao could not be provoked. A woman slowly walked out of the chaos. Mo Yaoi, you have no right to command the celestial race. Goddess she. When she appeared, many people's gazes turned strange. After all, she was Chu's old lover. The demon sneered, you aren't that strong yet. Ting has to make a move. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind playing with you. I just heard that Chu was your lover. He mocked. Your pretty boy has other women by his side. Zai's voice was soft and warm. What does it have to do with you? She asked. The celestial race won't interfere. If you don't like it, then you're welcome to try fighting us. Mo Yao looked at her deeply. In the end, he did not say anything harsh. Goddess she was weaker than he was, but her identity was special, so he could not push things too far. If that's the case, I'll eat your pretty boy in front of you. Will you stop me? Go on, kill that bug. Otherwise, I'll enjoy a taste of you today. Mo Yao looked at Piao with a malevolent expression. He glanced at Sha and gestured for her to attack him. Piao's face was ashen and her chest heaved in anger. Mo Yao might really do it. She looked at Sha and hesitated. Mo Yao, why are you bullying my junior sister? A clear voice was heard. A carefree man with large fluttering sleeves and a horsetail whisk in his hand appeared. Piao heaved a sigh of relief. Mo Yao looked at the person coldly. Yao, the woman that you have your eyes on has found a lover. You're not going to stand for that, right? Go, kill Zai's pretty boy. Yao shook his head and chuckled, not saying anything. When he arrived at the Immortal race's side, he glanced at Miao and opened his mouth, wanting to say something but could only sigh in the end. The word love was too hurtful. He had also fallen into its depths. However, he managed to walk out of it in the end. Among the Immortal ancestors' personal disciples, Miao was ranked fourth in terms of seniority, but he was the weakest. Mo Yao, Yao and she had returned, which meant that even stronger personal disciples of the ancestors of the three races had returned. Although she was weaker than the other two, her status allowed her to stabilize the situation of the celestial race. For the time being, no more Supreme Dragon or Phoenix experts returned. The monster race also had a Supreme expert return, but without the support of the dragons and the phoenixes, they were much weaker than the other races of the 9 zones. The forces of the ancient chaos world were also at a disadvantage. The forces that came from the chaos all retreated a distance away. Mo Yao was extremely brutal and could not be provoked. Outsiders should not interfere in the matters of the 9 zones. Mo Yao scanned the surroundings viciously. His gaze stopped on the races of the ancient chaos world. This is not a place where you can interfere. As he spoke, he looked at Yao and Shi. What do the two of you say? The battle for the opportunities of the 9 zones should only be fought among the races of the 9 zones. I have no objections. Strength is the only thing that matters. Yao chuckled. Unless these external forces had enough strength, they would not allow them to participate in this matter. Goddess she agreed. A voice came from the chaos. I also agree. Everything depends on strength. A supreme expert emerged. A supreme expert from the ancient chaos world. All of the races from the ancient chaos world heaved a sigh of relief. Kun Ji Yu. Mo Yaoi glanced at him, acknowledging his strength. He looked at Tai. The giant race is not qualified to participate. The giant race had sent Feng, whose current strength was not sufficient to hold any sway in the current situation. Tai coldly snorted. It was not up to him to decide whether the giant race would participate or not. Now that Mo Yao had appeared, his big brother would most likely return as well. Mo Yao stared at Tai coldly for a long time, as if wanting to swallow him. He then took a look at the dragons. Seeing Huang Long, he felt fearful. That dragon was not to be trifled with. He could not even gauge Huang Long's strength. He did not say anything. It was the same for the fiery phoenixes and that strange bird. He did not dare to look at it for fear of being tainted by misfortune. In any case, both were from the 9 zones, so they were qualified to participate. He looked at Shui Lian with a malice-filled gaze. Shui Lian's face paled and she took 2 steps back, hiding behind Chu. Before that, let's deal with these little human insects first. Mo Yao laughed maliciously. He opened his huge mouth, and tried to swallow the humans in one bite. Boom, boom, Ji stabbed the huge mouth with his sword. Sha also struck out with his saber. Ji's sword strike opened up a gap in Mo Yao's devouring power. However, Mo Yao was too strong. Ji snorted coldly and continued to attack. Each of his attacks had reached a new extreme, and the power of his attacks had surpassed his cultivation level. Even so, Ji was still no match for Mo Yao. Even with the unique nature of his extreme Dao, he was only as strong as an expert who had reached the 30 million mile mark. He would be able to resist for a while, but defeat was inevitable. A little bug dares to be so impudent. Mo Yao laughed wildly. In his heart, he was determined to kill Ji. If he allowed Ji time to develop, the latter would surpass him sooner or later. The extreme Dao was just that special. Ji kept attacking to resist Mo Yao's. However, it was getting more and more difficult. Mo Yao laughed savagely. It was as if he wanted to make the human race feel despair. Chu looked at Goddess Shi. The celestial race won't interfere, she snorted. We won't target you humans, but you should solve your own problems. Chu shook his head and laughed bitterly. Sighing, his eyes suddenly turned sharp, and his aura erupted. He had transcended the world creator realm and was no weaker than Sha. Tai was dumbfounded. How could this be? Chu glanced at him and smiled. I have to thank Tai for covering for me. You're a true brother. You're right. Schemes without strength are all futile. Mo Yao looked at him coldly. You're good at hiding your strength. But is that all? At this moment, Chu looked down arrogantly. If I was born during the era of the 3 ancestors, how could I be weaker than those 3? As long as I'm given enough time, I will definitely catch up and surpass the 3 ancestors. I am no weaker than any peerless genius. Many experts looked at him. Even Ji was the same. With this bit of strength, he was definitely stronger than Sha, but where did he get the confidence to say such things? Arrogant. Mo Yao laughed sarcastically and turned to Goddess Shi. Shi, your pretty boy is overestimating himself. You won't mind if I eat him, right? Goddess Shi kept a straight face and did not answer. Ha ha, Chu chuckled. At this moment, a figure emerged from the chaos, waving a fan lightly. The experts present were all shocked when they saw who it was. Chu. Mo Yao was stunned. I have never been arrogant. Chu flew over, displaying his strength openly. He had reached the 27 million mile mark. Stop him. Mo Shi's expression changed. The experts of the 9 zones who had transcended the world creator realm rushed toward Chu's main body together with Mo Shi. However, Chu Feng's main body had already arrived in front of the clone. Then, they fused. Boom. A powerful force erupted, and the power of his Dao path erupted as he threw a mighty punch. Boom. Mo Yao took a few steps back. Chu's current strength was no weaker than his. Tai was completely dumbfounded. He was the weakest of his generation. He really wanted to cry. He could not help but recall that Chu had once said that he was very strong. However, Tai had not believed him at the time. Good, Chu, you're good. Mo Yao said coldly. Everyone looked at Chu in shock. Both his main body and his clone had transcended the world creator realm. What a terrifying level of talent. Hong and the other human cultivators were all overjoyed. Ancestor Chu, you're amazing. Why are you all targeting the human race? Chu looked around. He looked at Miao. The Immortals started to target the human race because of you. No matter what grudges you have with Qin, that's between the 2 of you. Why did you involve the entire human race? It's no wonder you're trash. Even as the 4th personal disciple of the immortal ancestor, you're so weak. Chu's voice turned cold. Miao's expression changed, alternating between ferocity and resentment. Chu glanced at the celestial race and did not say anything. He looked at the other races of the 9 zones. If you don't have the strength, then don't get involved. Following the demon race will only get you killed. The experts of the 9 zones were all shocked. It turned out that Chu was already so strong. Their eyes were filled with fear. Mo Yao looked on coldly, but did not speak. No matter how strong Chu was, he was only one person. The demon race had more experts and trump cards. That being said, the human race had become a great threat. This was the case for Chu and Ji. He had to kill those 2. Otherwise, things would become troublesome for the demon race in the future. Chu looked at Mo Yao. He chuckled. Of the personal disciples of the demon ancestor, many have fallen. Mo Shi is here, and so are you, but where are the others? Are they not returning? Do you think you are qualified to fight against the demon race? Mo Yao looked at him coldly. The demon race is still very strong, and don't forget about the demon ancestor. No one from your human race is his match. But it won't be easy to exterminate the human race, Chu said with a smile. Then let's try. A voice rang out. As the voice rang out, many of the cultivators felt as if their blood had been ignited. It seemed like it was about to be sucked dry. Mo Shui. A terrifying scarlet figure emerged from the distance. What about the others? Chu didn't seem nervous at all. The experts were puzzled. Where did Chu's confidence stem from? Where did he get the confidence that he could withstand so many experts? There were no other experts of this level among the human race. Ji was still a little lacking, and Sha was much weaker. Today, I'll exterminate your human race. Mo Shui's voice was cold. With a boom, a wave of blood energy appeared in the chaos, filling the air with the scent of blood. The surging waves of blood contained countless resentful spirits. He attacked alongside Mo Yao. The terrifying evil intent seemed to have condensed into physical form. Miao struggled, but finally walked out. I want to kill all humans. With the sword in his hand, he walked toward the human race's experts. Piao shook her head and sighed, but did not stop him. Chu sneered in disdain. Mei's figure moved, wanting to suppress Miao, but Mo Shi blocked her way. Miao's expression was ferocious, and the power of his Dao path surged in tandem with his soaring killing intent. The battle was about to start. In the chaos, a prison god palace was moving toward the 9 zones extremely quickly. Behind it was Qin, whose gaze was cold as he stared at the prison god palace. After so many years, he was finally going to return to the 9 zones. The time had come. Outside the divine world, demonic power roiled. Qin's expression was cold as he looked at the great battle that was about to break out outside the divine world. As expected, the demons were targeting the humans again. The other races had joined forces to oppress the human race as well. He saw Miao. Back then, it was this person who had tried to kill him several times. In the end, he was forced to fake his death and escape from the 9 zones. He did not know who that person was. It was only later that he found out that it was an expert of the human race who had obtained the body tempering technique and brought a short period of peace to the human race. That person had been Miao's love rival, yet he had been mistaken for that person. The scenes from the past surfaced in his mind. Qin's expression turned cold. Killing intent emerged. It was time for revenge. So what if he was the personal disciple of the immortal ancestor? When had he ever offended Miao? When did he offend the immortal race? He had simply wanted to keep a low profile and comprehend the great Tao to start a golden age for the human race. In the end, he was forced to leave the 9 zones and flee into the chaos. There, he had even offended First, who was the pawn of Prison Tao Ancient God, and was pursued by Prison Tao Ancient God personally. For a long time, he had always been careful and avoided the latter's pursuit. No matter how low profile he was, even though he was not weak now, he did not have much of a reputation in the chaos. The source of all this was Miao. He was not afraid of the immortal ancestor either. He had left a backup plan in the 9 zones. As long as he succeeded in executing it, he would be able to handle the situation. He turned his head to look at the distant prison Tao Ancient God. A cold glint flashed across the depths of his eyes. He would kill an ancient chaos god of chaos to complete the final plan. Before that, it was time to take revenge for the past. Miao flew toward the human race's forces. His sword released a sharp killing intent. Sha took a step forward and stared at him coldly. Chu's expression became a little more serious when he faced Mo Yao and Mo Shui. The demons looked down at the humans, and then turned around to look at Kun Ji Yu. If you want to obtain a spot to enter the 9 zones, then make your move. The position of the human race can be given to you in the races of the ancient chaos world. Kun Gu's eyes flashed and he stepped out. Chu's expression darkened. Kun Gu's interference was slightly out of his expectations, however, given the circumstances, it was not too surprising. The human race was blessed by the great Tao, and if they could seize a part of the human race's fate, it would be easier to obtain opportunities in the 9 zones. The battle was about to start. All of a sudden, the experts present looked to the side. A prison god palace flew over rapidly. Prison Tao Ancient God subordinates. There seemed to be a person standing in front of the prison god palace. Suddenly, the man moved. In a flash, the prison god palace was reduced to dust. Miao, I'll take your life today. A furious roar was heard. A golden fist imprint appeared in the sky and hurtled toward Meow. Meow's expression changed. Yao's expression changed. He waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, and threads of it sliced through space, wrapping around the golden fist imprint. Boom! The horsetail whisk exploded, but the golden fist did not stop. Yao waved his sleeve, and the power of his Tao path and world appeared, pressing down on the golden fist imprint. You think you can stop me? Qin's figure had already charged over, and he threw another overbearing punch. Boom! Meow, do you still recognize me? Qin. Meow's expression changed drastically. How was that possible? Qin did not die. Furthermore, he was actually so powerful. Haha, it's good that you remember. I'll return the enmity of the past to you today. Qin was incomparably tyrannical. A golden light bathed his body and he instantly transformed into a golden figure that was 10,000 feet tall. A terrifying and boundless power swept out in all directions. 3 punches forced Yao back. Then, a finger descended. Meow roared angrily, his sword striking out. This sword strike contained all of his strength. I'll kill you with a finger. Piao hurriedly made a move, wanting to block this finger. However, Qin's fist blasted toward her, sending her flying. PFF'd. Meow's Tao path and world collapsed, and his body began to crack. Qin looked down at him with unparalleled arrogance. I'm not him, but you didn't believe me, and used that as an excuse to try and kill me. Have a taste of your own medicine. Meow's lips quivered, pieces of his body fell apart. He turned around with difficulty and looked at the 9 zones. His eyes began to lose focus, and his soul began to collapse. Finally, he sighed. Yun, maybe I was wrong. Boom. Meow turned into ashes, and the phenomenon that signified the collapse of a Tao path appeared. Qin returned to his true form, then looked at Yao and Piao. If you want revenge, get your master to come. Then, he raised his head and looked at Mo Yao and Mo Shui. Did you really think that the human race lacked experts? Then, he looked at Kun Ji Yu. Do you really think we humans are easy to bully? Boom, he threw another overbearing punch. Kun Gu's expression changed drastically, and he unleashed the power of his Tao path as he struck out with his hammer. In the end, he was still sent flying 1,000,000 miles away. Terrifying. Qin had created the cultivation method of the human race. He was the #1 genius of the human race. It was rumored that he had already fallen. However, he had now returned in a domineering fashion. The faces of all of the experts of the 9 zones changed. When Chuzan saw Qin, he thought to himself, as expected, how could the creator of the human race's cultivation technique die so easily? Qin had reached the 40 million mile mark. He was currently the strongest expert present there. Furthermore, thanks to this, Chuzan now knew who the corpse-like incarnation in the heavenly domain was. Qin's clone. This guy was planning something big. Had the 9 zones not become Chuzan's territory and the great Tao had not been devoured and replaced by the heavenly Tao, Qin's plan would have very likely succeeded. Even though his plan was destined to fail because of Chuzan. Still, his clone had obtained the great fortune of the heavenly Tao. In that sense, he had also benefited. Qin had returned and killed Meow, and then forced Kun Ji Yu back. His overbearing and powerful aura overpowered Mo Yao and Mo Shui. The humans were excited. The human race also had such a powerful expert. Greetings, Ancestor Qin. Chu bowed respectfully. Qin had created a cultivation method for the human race, which was a key catalyst in making the human race stronger. They had received the body tempering technique from the giant race, but in terms of overall influence and contribution to the future generations of the human race, Qin ranked first. Thanks to his efforts, the humans created many more cultivation methods and secret techniques. Qin looked at the human race as experts. Although their strength and cultivation foundation were not as strong as the immortal, celestial and demon races, they had already surpassed the other powerful races in the 9 zones. He looked at Ji. This person was extremely special, and his extreme Tao was extraordinary. Humans shouldn't fear strong enemies, so what if we're up against the demon race? So what if we're up against the immortal race? So what if we're up against the celestial race? Whether it's the demon ancestor's personal disciple or the immortal ancestor's personal disciple, if you're not convinced, come and fight me. Mo Yao's expression was filled with fear. This was beyond his expectations. Qin had actually returned. Yao's expression was dark. No matter what Meow had done, he was still the personal disciple of the immortal ancestor and his junior brother. This matter could not be resolved peacefully. Qin looked at the 9 zones. He was excited. This was a great opportunity. The time for his plan was ripe. He looked at Hong and the others. Those who have not transcended the world creator realm, leave. This is not a battle you can participate in. There was going to be a huge battle. Prison Tao ancient god was about to arrive, so those who had not transcended the world creator realm were useless. Hong and the others had long wanted to leave. They were also clear that they would only be a burden if they stayed. Furthermore, it was likely that they would be killed. Earlier, they were unable to leave due to the pressure exerted by the various races. Now that Qin had spoken, the experts of the 9 zones did not dare to stop them. Qin was currently the strongest expert here. Even if Mo Yao and Mo Shui joined forces, they likely would not be able to beat him. Many thanks, Ancestor Qin. We will leave now. Hong cupped his fists and left with the human experts. If the human race was defeated, they still had a chance to lead the human race to rise again. They were all very experienced in hiding and concealing their tracks. Otherwise, they would have been exterminated by the other races a long time ago. Hong and the rest left. Qin's fist blasted into the chaos and destroyed all traces of their aura to avoid any tracking measures. On the human race's side, only Qin, Chu, Ji, and Sha were left. Including Shui Lian and Zan, there were a total of 6 people. As Hong and the others left, the other experts from the various races who had yet to transcend the world creator realm also left and returned to the ancient chaos world. They did not dare to get close to this region of the chaos. Qin, the one holding the great fortune of the human race. You created the human race's cultivation technique. Truly impressive, Mo Yao said coldly. Qin ignored him. Instead, he sent a voice transmission to the 3 of them. Let's get closer to the 9 zones. I'm going to seize the fortune of the 9 zones and control the great Tao of the 9 zones. Prison Tao ancient god is about to arrive. Just stall him for a moment. Chu's heart stirred as he fell into a state of deep thought. Qin had disappeared from the 9 zones for a long time. He created the cultivation method of the human race and was blessed by the great Tao, which naturally benefited the human race. The current cultivation system of the human race originated from Qin. Therefore, Chu Feng guessed that Qin must have made some arrangements before leaving the 9 zones. Now, the time was ripe. If he really took control of the great Tao of the 9 zones, the human race would be invincible. The group of powerful experts looked on gloomily as Qin and the others approached the 9 zones. Ji looked at Qin and pondered in his heart, should he reveal something to Qin? The great Tao of the 9 zones was gone, and only the heavenly Tao remained. The fortune of the world only existed because of the birth of the Lord of Chaos. Qin's plan to control the great Tao of the 9 zones was also akin to a plan to control the heavenly Tao. How could he succeed? The 9 zones were no longer the 9 zones of the past. Ji did not say anything in the end. Since the Supreme Lord did not mention anything, he would let the situation progress. Even if he did not succeed, Qin would at least get some benefits, right? He did not know what the latter had planned in the 9 zones. Qin and the others only stopped when they reached the edge of the power of rejection. Once there, Qin silently communicated with his clone in the 9 zones. At this moment, in the heavenly domain, a special small realm was opened, from which the corpse-like incarnation walked out. His flesh and blood began to recover. In an instant, he looked exactly like Qin. At the same time, the clone's Tao path appeared and connected with the heavenly Tao. A worldly phenomenon erupted from his body. His fate was extremely profound. The appearance of Qin's clone immediately shocked the Daoyuan realm cultivators of the 9 zones. They could not get close, but they all sensed the appearance of a powerful existence. Heiyu and the other disciples looked at Qin. Through the heavenly Tao seals, they could see Qin's location. Chu Zan did not say anything, so they just watched silently. Qin's fate was extremely dense. Part of it was transformed from the fate of the great Tao of the 9 zones, while the other part was formed from the fate of the heavenly Tao. The ancient chaos god also opened his eyes and looked at Qin. However, he did not show himself. He could vaguely sense Qin's presence, but at the same time, Qin's clone had also sensed his presence. At this moment, Qin's clone said, "You and I have not interfered with each other thus far, so please don't interfere with me now." "I won't." The ancient chaos god looked on silently. For some reason, he felt that the great Tao of the 9 zones seemed to be different from before. Chu Zan looked at Qin's clone silently and did not interfere, allowing the latter to carry out his plan. He sighed. Qin had made ample preparations. His clone had been blessed by the great Tao, so even though the great Tao had expelled the experts of the various races, this clone had not been excluded. Qin was blessed by the great Tao, and his fate was so rich that it was beyond imagination. It probably had something to do with the cultivation method he had created for the human race. 90% of his fate was concentrated in his clone, while only 10% of his fate remained in his main body. The clone had been in the 9 zones for a long time and had been gathering even more fate energy. Therefore, this clone had been deeply integrated with the Great Tao. Chuzan already understood Qin's plan, which was to merge his clone with his main body, and using the accumulated fate, control the laws of the Great Tao of the 9 zones. He would make the 9 zones his own. In this way, as long as the Great Tao of the 9 zones was not destroyed, he would never die. He could even use it to obtain the opportunities in the 9 zones to comprehend the supreme laws of the chaos, and eventually break through to the chaos supreme realm. Even if he could not make the 9 zones his own, he believed that he would be able to control at least 1/3 of the laws of the Great Tao. That would be sufficient to tide him over in this situation. Even if the 3 ancestors acted, as long as the Great Tao of the 9 zones was not destroyed, Qin would have a chance to escape. Even if he was forced to remain dormant, he would return one day. The 9 zones were the first world created by the chaos, and they were connected to the supreme laws of the chaos. Therefore, destroying the 9 zones would inevitably trigger a backlash from the supreme laws of the chaos. Therefore, even Chaos Supreme Realm experts would not destroy the 9 zones. Qin's plan was brilliant. Once it succeeded, even the 3 ancestors would not be able to do anything to him. Chuzan sighed. What an extraordinary plan. Qin's talent had to be extremely monstrous, and he definitely had the potential to reach the Chaos Supreme Realm. Unfortunately, the Great Tao of the 9 zones had been replaced by the Heavenly Tao, and Qin's plan was destined to fail.